Good morning, folks. This is Jack Barry coming to you live from Philadelphia, and welcome to the 2020 National Association of Gay, Lesbian, Real Estate Professionals National Housing Policy Summit. I'm coming to you from Philadelphia, where in the state of Pennsylvania, we're not allowed to practice real estate right now. There's 4 states that aren't, everybody else is. So we hope that everybody is safe wherever you're at, and that everybody in your family is safe also. This has been quite a year for the LGBT community, absent, let alone the coronavirus things that are happening out there. But getting the Equality Act passed, even though it's stalled right now, it's just we had a lot of momentum the end of last year, beginning of this year with that, and we're going to talk more about that at the end of the. When we talk to some of our elected officials, but we need to keep the momentum going. Right now, we're encouraging everybody to just keep in touch with your clients. Even in my case, I have business clients that are outside the realm of real estate that we coach, and virtually keeping in touch with everybody. From the real estate side, we're sending everybody that we can through the National Association of Realtors, RPR, Realtor Property Resource. We send them a property valuation. We're just sending that out to them as a touch, just letting people to know that we're here. The National Association of Realtors says that 81% of home buyers will deal with the very first realtor they come in contact with. And before that used to be shaking hands at open houses or doing first-time buyer events, but now it's virtually. And so we have to try a different way. It doesn't necessarily mean harder, but just a different way of reaching out to our clients, our audience, whoever that is. Our first guest today is one of our sponsors, Wells Fargo, and that is from Keith Style. So he's going to take a few minutes and tell us about Wells Fargo, home mortgage. And are you on the line, Keith?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
We can. Welcome. Where are you calling from, Keith?
I'm in Washington, D.C., where we all should be today.
We wish we were.
Yes.
Well, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Very happy to be here and very pleased to be sponsoring the summit. Of course, I wish everybody could be here in the Washington, D.C. area. It's a beautiful day today. But I am a branch manager with Wells Fargo. I support 20 loan officers in the D.C. metropolitan area. And again, welcome to the summit, and thank you for having me and being able to speak on behalf of Wells Fargo. These are very challenging times, as I know we're all experiencing. And so for our clients, for our referral sources, for our team, it's definitely some troubled times. And so I wanted to go about a process that we put in place that, if you think back to 2008, when we unfortunately had a lot of homeowners lose their homes and go into foreclosure and short sales, I'm happy to say that we're on the front end of that process. And so we are helping clients with a 90-day deferral of their mortgage payments. After those 90 days, should they choose to defer for another 90 days, we're prepared to do that. We're probably really prepared, to be honest with you, to go a year if that's what's necessary to try to keep clients in their homes. And so, again, versus 2008, 9, and 10, when we had the whole housing meltdown, we're really trying to be on the front end of the process and help our clients stay in their homes, especially while we're going through such unemployment crisis compared to really in history. So very easy for clients to do if you have any clients that you've worked with and they had a Wells Fargo mortgage, or many lenders are doing this, so it's not just us. They can simply go to their online banking, click onto their mortgage, and it'll walk them through their process. And so I'm happy to say that that's where we are on the process of for those people that are maybe having some troubled times, or maybe have unfortunately been furloughed or experiencing unemployment. The other thing in the news that most recently was shared is there's a little thing I'd like to clear up, that we are no longer doing jumbo mortgages. That's not quite true. We are still doing jumbo mortgages within our footprint and within our team of distributed retail Wells Fargo team members. What we have sunset for the temporary time frame is anything on the correspondent side in jumbo space. So any of the correspondent lenders who typically would sell to Wells Fargo, we have temporarily stopped that process, and it would just be Wells Fargo team members. So I just want to clarify that, because a lot of the headlines said Wells Fargo discontinues jumbo mortgages, and that's not quite true. So just wanted to clarify that point. Happy to be here today. Happy to be with all of you, and excited about what we have in store for the agenda. And I'm on the NAGLREP website, so please feel free to reach out to me should you have any questions with clients that might be in there or looking into the forbearance process or looking to do a mortgage. We have many clients where we have a ton of mortgages we're doing today, which is great news. It's certainly, I'm sure, not to the levels that all of the real estate professionals that might be on the virtual meeting today might be experiencing. But some folks might be having record highs this year so far. Either way, we are here to stay. We are here doing business, and reach out to me on the website with my phone number or my individual website should you have any questions.
Keith, thank you very much. Thanks a lot for your support, from Wells Fargo, and for the work that you do with NAGLREP and in the industry. And for being on the call today. Next up, we have Jeff Berger. Jeff's going to talk to us about LGBT community and housing, and unpack a little bit of the NAGLREP report, the real estate report from the survey that we had from our membership. Jeff, are you here?
Absolutely.
There he goes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Jack. Well, it's truly been an interesting time, and thank you everyone for joining us. Just want to start by saying that I truly miss you all, and wishing you and all of your families are well. As we experience this virtual event, I look back to our first LGBT housing policy summit in 2017. The event was created in response to the current administration and their anti-LGBT policies. Later that year, we released our first LGBT real estate report. NAGLREP initiated both programs to raise awareness for adding LGBT protections to federal fair housing law, to increase LGBT homeownership rates, and to highlight our importance as LGBT real estate professionals in our industry. So here we are, our fourth summit. And early this month, NAGLREP released our fourth annual LGBT real estate report. I want to thank Freddie Mac and Remax for sponsoring the report, and thank you to 930 NAGLREP members who participated in our survey. When I tell industry peers that 1/3 of NAGLREP members answered our survey, they are always impressed with our high level of engagement. The high rate shows how much we truly care about LGBT homeownership and our careers. If you haven't already downloaded the report, please do at naglrep.com. It's on the homepage. With a sense of unity, I thought I would begin with how similar the LGBT community is to all home buyers and sellers. Our members shared that they believe affordability, competition, inventory levels, and the amount needed for a down payment are typical concerns. This all sounds familiar. We're also seeing marriage and children driving the desire for LGBT homeownership. 57% of our members believe that more married LGBT couples are buying homes today than before the 2015 Supreme Court marriage equality win. This is up from 47% back in 2017. Also, almost 70% of our members believe the number of LGBT people with children has increased. This is another great sign, as children usually equals homeownership. The main differentiator is the continued impact of discrimination throughout the entire buying and selling process, and that includes the lending side. Later in the summit, we'll hear an update from our newly formed LGBT Mortgage Advisory Group. This is why the Equality Act remains so important to us. Just a couple of weeks after last year's policy summit, the Equality Act passed in the House. It was an incredible moment, and while it remains stuck in the Senate, we should all recognize that the Equality Act would have a huge impact on the real estate market, and here's why. LGBT homeownership rates currently stand at just 49%, 16 points below the national average. But the majority of NAGLREP members believe that within 5 years of the Equality Act becoming law, that rate will rise at least 9%. As we know, the current administration is not doing the LGBT community any favors. Almost 60% of our members believe the administration's policies are having a negative impact on the LGBT's community confidence to buy a home. With thanks to our dedicated NAGLREP members and partners, together we are leading Main Street and corporate America in the push for complete LGBT equality. And with our movement, NAGLREP has forged great relationships with the largest LGBT nonprofits, including the Human Rights Campaign, the National LGBT Chamber of Commerce, Lambda Legal, SAGE, the Matthew Shepard Foundation, and most recently, NAGLREP and PFLAG signed a 2-year agreement with the goal of increasing LGBT homeownership. I'm so proud to share with us today is PFLAG Director of Advocacy, Policy, and Partnerships, Diego Sanchez. And I'll bring Diego into the call, and we'll have a brief chat. Diego, welcome today. How are you?
Doing fantastic.
Great, great. Thanks so much for joining us on our virtual LGBT Policy Summit. And ironically, you're in DC. You're in the right place, huh?
One of the many, yes.
Well, thanks again for sharing your time with us. Can you share a little bit about your role at PFLAG and the organization's prominent role within the LGBT community?
Thank you so much, Jeff, and thank you for including PFLAG National in this very important event. I know that everyone else can't be in DC. I'll hold the fort along with a few of your other speakers. My name's Diego Sanchez. I'm the Director of Advocacy, Policy, and Partnerships at PFLAG National. So my role is to work with the federal legislature as well as state municipal bodies, state legislators, and city councils to advocate for LGBT inclusive bills, laws, and executive policies. I also get to work with our chapters in terms of getting their advocacy up and running. PFLAG is run on three pillars: support for all the support groups across the country, education that we do with community groups and school boards and such, and then also advocacy, which is where we try to make inclusive laws and bills the way that we all get to live most equally and fairly.
Really amazing. We've followed your mission and the great work that PFLAG does for so long now. The organization is how many years old, you said? What year was it founded?
It was founded in 1972 when a mom supported her gay son in the Christopher Street Parade, the precursor to the New York Pride Parade, because she was watching television one night and saw on the news in New York a kid and a group of kids getting beat up. And then she looked more closely, and one of them was her son. She received a call from police later that night and said, "Ma'am, do you know your son is a homosexual?" And she said, "Yes, and why are you bothering him?" So with that loving support, that's the foundation of PFLAG. We now have 400 chapters in all 50 states, including Puerto Rico and DC as well. And we're 400,000, 250,000 members and supporters.
Wow, Wow. And, you know, in a time like this with the current pandemic that we're in, what are the 400 PFLAG chapters doing to support LGBT families in the weight of this current situation we're in?
First of all, Jeff, I really want to, my heart is with all of your members and the struggles that you must be engaging in. These are shared struggles in the same way that people who work in real estate are waiting to be able to sit, you know, that familiar picture that everyone who's ever purchased or sold a home has, with sitting with your real estate person, your banker, your insurance person, after the inspector has come through. All of these different parties come together to create, making a dream come true. That's the same thing that we do with our PFLAG chapters across the country. These 400 chapters, we first, of course, it just like everyone, had to suspend in-person meetings. What we did then in a week, PFLAG National created something called PFLAG Connects. And that is a use through Zoom. We purchased Zoom for every chapter that's in good standing so that they can hold virtual meetings. We also, as staff, are getting to participate in some of those meetings. So they're making available these meetings that used to be in person, doing them now virtually through Zoom. It included training the chapters and getting them on board. But it's also something that we've looked at overall for a long time, because there are a lot of rural areas that aren't able to, where people cannot safely come together. This is creating more room for that. Why it matters. With everyone staying home, you've got kids who were not necessarily out at home, who are now at home with their family. You have kids who may not have been safe and were able to confide in teachers or people of faith or people in their neighborhood that they no longer can reach. So it becomes a safety as much as a loving support matter at this moment.
Yes, wow. Well, thank you for the great work you're doing. It's just so important. And there really is no other LGBT organization like PFLAG that's doing the work you do. So the void that you fill and the tremendous effort that you all do every day is just so appreciated.
Well, it
So
matters.
appreciated. I can't even put into words. And so this year, NAGLREP and PFLAG signed a historic partnership. Okay. 3 months into our beginnings, of course, we're facing these headwinds. As real estate professionals, what can we do together to help LGBT families as it pertains to the well-being and home ownership?
Well, I think, Jeff, I'll say that I've got to give you credit, as you and Drew are putting together the pieces of what our partnership would look like. You had already thought about how we can combine our two organizations to support our community. So that includes things like doing the PFLAG Academy online session from your people to be able to help our families be able to know how to navigate those very scary steps leading to home ownership. It's one of the American dreams, but not everyone knows how to do it. The real estate community is able to find the pockets of protection and the places of safety for our families. And I think being able to bring both our PFLAG families as well as their friends together with people in NAGLREP to be able to understand with comfort possibilities of home ownership. We're going to have a moment where the piece of real estate professionalism is going to be such an important bridge back into banks. I mean, I know every time that I purchased a home, my real estate professional was my most trusted ally. I didn't know how to navigate securing the finances, hiring the right inspector to make sure you're getting an honest take. Your organization is the cornerstone to all communities. So I think bringing ours together is most fortuitous that we have forged this relationship this year. And I know that together we will navigate this time together.
Agreed. Agreed. Very well said. I know the 40 chapters of NAGLREP are very much looking forward to getting back in tune and also getting involved in your virtual events. I know you're doing a lot of virtual events, also your chapters. So that's something that, you know, we look forward to. And now that our membership watching this has seen this, I think they'll be encouraged more to get engaged and truly fulfill the goals that we set forth in the agreement. And well, thank you so much for being with us. You know,
I do want to mention, I want to mention one thing. If everybody on this virtual center needs a little fun every week, PFLAG National hosts Facebook Live on Thursdays at 4:30 Eastern Time, something called Something to Talk About. And it's 30 minutes of just interactive relaxation and fun on an LGBTQ topic led by our learning and inclusion staff. So I invite everybody to join in at pflag.org, at PFLAG on Facebook.
Great. Thank you so much for the invite.
Thank you very much.
Be well, Diego. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
A pleasure. Jack, your mic is muted.
Thank you, Jeff and Diego. Next up, we have David Siroty from he represents the National Association of Gay and Lesbian Real Estate Professionals, and he's going to interview Anthony Hutchinson, who is the Freddie Mac Director of Government Relations. David, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Are you there? And Anthony Hutchins, I see you. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. How are you?
I'm going to hand it over to David. Take it away, David.
All right. Let me
Look at you working the technology there.
take the background off because it is not working the way it worked yesterday. Unfortunately. All right. So, Anthony, I want to thank you profusely, let's use the right word, for being with NAGLREP from the very beginning as a friend and a partner. I'm curious why Freddie Mac all those years ago thought it was important to be engaged in the LGBT community.
Thanks, David, for the question. Thanks for everybody for participating this morning. It's good to see folks. David, it's good to see you. Glad everyone is safe and healthy. Freddie Mac, when I first got there, the emphasis was on home possible. And we've since changed our motto to a home for all. And they actually live by that creed. It's not just home for, you know, the majority or people who have money or, you know, folks who have inherited housing. They want everyone to have the ability to purchase a house, if you want to. And one of the communities when I got there that, you know, we weren't really talking about it. They were talking about it in Freddie Mac, but really we weren't really engaged with was the LGBTQ community. So when Jeff came and approached me and said, hey, you know, we've got this organization that is specifically here to help the LGBTQ community understand the value of home ownership and form realtors of the tools that are out there that can help people move into that space, I thought it was a great fit. I went and told the folks at Freddie Mac about the organization, and they wholeheartedly embraced it and said, yes, this is an organization that we want to work with. This is a group of people that to this point we haven't had a formal engagement with, but we definitely want to help them in any way possible understand the values of homeownership, which we know they do, and achieve that goal. So from the beginning, Freddie Mac saw the value in this organization, who they could reach, how they could reach them, and effectively gave me the backing to help you get out there and push the word of homeownership. So it's been something that's been very good for us, and we are extremely excited to continue to build upon.
Well, the thing that that has been striking from a public awareness of Freddie Mac really being involved outside of sponsorship was your relationship with the group on the LGBT real estate report over the last couple of years. How has that showcased itself, and what is your thoughts of how the report could be even strengthened over the next several years?
Well, it's the thing that's great about that is it allows us to be able to put our fingers on the pulse of what's going on in the community and determine, what's working, what's not, what are some issues. I will say this, selfishly for us, it's a tool that we can use to get some insight into what's going on in the community, something that we hadn't had in the past. We were able to see all these other reports, and we conducted reports about, what does everyone think about home ownership? Do people want to own? What are the issues? But we really hadn't broken it down into different segments. And we began doing that. And the one segment a couple of years ago, we sat back and said, hold on, we hear all these issues that NAGLREP continues to discuss. We really need to put, some numbers around that so that we can understand what our response needs to be. So I will say this, selfishly, it was good intelligence for us. We have used that information and we pass it around our company so that all of the products that we put in place, can not just reflect the needs of people who want home ownership, but actually address some of the needs of the LGBTQ community. And moreover, we want to make sure that any product that we put out there is aligned with everyone. So we need to know this. So I think that you're going to see us just delve even more deeply into research within the LGBT community, as we do with a number of the other populaces that are interested in home ownership. Intelligence, market intelligence specifically, is the key to coming up with good products, good policy, so that we can ensure that everybody has the opportunity to own their home. And we're going to work as hard as we can to do that. But the foundation is information, and you're going to see us put more time, people, and money into developing that research so that we can get the intelligence that we need. And hopefully you all, the organization and its members and even the broader community finds value in it. And I would also say, if there's information that you don't see us collecting, we need you to let us know that and offer some suggestions for other information. That's part of it. It's not this research doesn't need to be a one-way device. It doesn't just need to be you sharing what's going on and that's it. We want to share what we're doing, but also tell us back, what are we missing in that gathering process? What is it that we don't understand? Where are the nuances that we need to put some specificity around?
And the report itself has done over the last couple of years an exceptional job of showing, as you said, in numbers, how discrimination really does impact on the LGBT community's capability and desire to get into home ownership. Fair housing is obviously critical. Where do you and Freddie Mac fall? What are you seeing on that fair housing side, and what can we continue to go forward and to do?
Well, the one thing that's really interesting about the LGBTQ community is that it reflects every group of people out there. So when there is fair housing issues identified in the LGBTQ community, all it does is reinforce all of the other running into nationally. So that it's disconcerting to see the level of discrimination, but also for the people who are gathering the information, it sits back and we sit there and go, okay, so the things that we're seeing everywhere else, this confirms it. So now let's go tackle it. Freddie Mac, again, wants to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to purchase a home if they so choose. We also want to make sure that people have a place to live and can live where they want. So with that said, we are trying to do our best to push out product, to push out internal policies that can effectively and positively impact that. Now, our reach is not as large as maybe we would like, or maybe the industry would like. Where we are right now within our conservatorship and how we're handled regulatorily, we can share information up the food chain and let folks know, but the real actions related to enforcement are going to be at you all's level, bringing some light to what's going on out there. We are dedicated to gathering the information, sharing it with the organization, and doing what we can to help support your efforts as you go out and discuss fair housing. So the data that we have is at your disposal. This report is just one of the tools that can be utilized. That's where we are right now. In the future, I don't know. If we're able to come out of conservatorship, get back to the way things possibly were, I don't know. We will have to wait and see what folks will be willing to allow us to do and where our voices would be heard. But in terms of compliance, we make sure, this is one thing I'll throw out there, we make sure that all the folks who do business with us adhere to fair housing rules. And if folks are not, I ask you again to share that information with us. So go into our legal group, into our fair housing group, and then they will talk to those bad actors and try to figure out some way to handle that. But again, that's intelligence that we have to get from the folks on the ground, and that's where we hope that your organization comes in to help us.
Anthony, where do you see homeownership going for the LGBT community?
Based on the numbers, I think it goes up. And the reason I say that is because when you look at the home ownership rate and then compare that to folks' desire to purchase a home, that's, there is nowhere to go but up. That's all that that's all that they're talking about. Everybody wants to own a home, especially, and the thing that's kind of funny is the community acts like every other community out there. You get older, you couple up, you start talking about having kids, you have kids, you want to buy a house, you want to have a place to live. So I look at those numbers and I say, if we can figure out a way, one, to educate the membership on their ability to purchase, ensure that they have fair rights when they go out there and do our best to do that, then I see nothing but great possibility for the LGBTQ community to go out and purchase a house. And I would hope that they are able to do that. And again, we're here to do our best to help them with that. And we're here to provide you with the information that you guys can use to help achieve that goal.
And you've got a variety of different programs in place to help the diverse community and the underserved communities. I know that on May 5th, we're going to do a special call with you for the NAGLREP members, but can you just talk about what some of the issues are and how Freddie Mac is addressing them?
Okay. Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up because I totally was spacing on the call that we're going to have in early May. That call, and I would suggest that everybody who's on this call dial in. We're going to be specifically talking about our response to the COVID epidemic and things that you need to know that you can pass on to your clients, or that maybe you can utilize yourself when it comes to how you handle the current issue, whether or not you need some level of forbearance, or you just need to see some tools that are out there to help people better understand their situation and what it looks like coming out on the other side. We've put together a number of resources on our website. I know that Jeff has been linking them to the NAGLREP website, and there's more efforts there to even enhance the NAGLREP website so it's easier to get to some of our information. But I would tell people, go out and see the Freddie Mac COVID page. Read some of the bulletins that we're passing through your organization about some of the changes that are going on. And the one thing I'll tell you is the changes are happening every other day. Every time I turn around, there is some change to some guidance. Right now we're right on top of the CARES Act. They want to implement that. We came out a little bit early, and now we're right on. So there was some gap, but now we're right on top of it in terms of what the CARES Act wants to do and what we're doing in terms of our policy. I would say our sister Fannie Mae is right there with us. Our regulator FHFA does a very good job of making sure that we're where we need to be. but there still is a lot of confusion in the marketplace about things that are occurring and how the implementation of those different policies work. I would say check our pages daily, maybe subscribe to one of our pages so that you get normal updates and you don't have to go back and check daily. But I would say things are extremely fluid. So one, our implementation matches the CARES Act, but there's always unintended consequences and there are things that need to be addressed. And that's what we're doing. So I would check that out. And that's what I'm going to talk about at our meeting on May. As far as other product, we still have our 3% down. We're open for business. If folks are out in the marketplace and want to buy, you find the house that you want, or you find the seller, or you find a buyer for your property, it can happen. We're still funding. We're not closed. So just sharing that with folks.
So you don't need 20% down even now today?
No, not at all. It's kind of funny that people still think you need, in this day and age, that you need 20% down. Even before the epidemic hit, people were still going out talking about, I need 20% down. No, you don't. 3% with some of our programs is all you need to get in.
So in closing, Anthony, if you're a member, a NAGLREP member, you're out working with buyers and sellers, from a mortgage side, what's the most important thing they have to understand today?
I would say the most important thing is they need to understand that they may need a little more time to get things done. The products are still out there, but the process is in place for the application, the manufacturing of the mortgage may take a little more time. So the expectations you foster with your clients need to be one of patience and say, hey, look, we know we can get this done. We know that you're qualified. We know that the buyer wants to purchase your house or the seller wants to sell it to you. But right now, there's so much going on. There's so many changes. Just be a little bit patient. A lot of refis going in. That's pushing capacity for some mortgage lenders to the limit. You've got folks that are still trying to do business and do just normal purchase money, but there are other things that they need to think about and do while they try to implement some of the CARES Act issues and the policies that we've put out because of that. And nobody wants to make a mistake because nobody wants to have that mortgage put back or cause somebody the inability to purchase a home when they told them they could purchase. So just be patient. Things will continue to work.
All right, so we will see you, Anthony, and also Carmen on May 5th. You'll see more information about that in the newsletter that NAGLREP will share at the end of the week. So
Thanks.
With that, Jack, back to you.
David and Anthony, thank you very much. Stay safe in your respective towns. And thanks for your time this morning. Next up, folks, we have my friend Julie Nelson is going to moderate a panel of what I would say is the all-stars, the VIPs of the real estate industry. And she's going to talk and unpack a little bit about the LGBT community in real estate. And she has Tanya from Realogy on the panel, Mike from Remax, Teresa from HSF, Anthony Hitt from Engel and Völkers, Scott from EXP, and Tami from Exit Realty. Julie, are you here? Are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. How are you, love?
Awesome. Great. Thanks for pulling us in, and we appreciate you guys hustling behind the scenes to make this happen. So let's get started. Good morning, everybody. And we'll make sure, you'll notice that you've got your mic in the corner of your screen for mute or unmute. And we'll just roll through this. So I think we have Tanya Reu-Narvaez from Realogy, Senior Vice President, Human Resources, wave. Everybody identify. Hey, Tanya. Mike Reagan, Remax, Senior VP, Global Alliances.
Good morning.
Hey, Mike. Good morning. Teresa Palacios-Smith. Hey, Teresa, HFS Affiliates, Vice President, Diversity and Inclusion. Good to see you. It's been a year. Anthony Hitt. Where is it? Oh, there he is, right in the middle of my screen. Engel and Völkers, America's President and CEO. Good morning, Anthony. Scott Saghirian. Where's
Hi there.
There you are, Scott. Hey, good morning. eXp Realty Senior VP of Agent Experience and Tami Bonnell.
Hi there.
There we are. Isn't it funny how you have to look around the screen? Hey, Tami, Exit Realty CEO. So the topic of our session today, and obviously we're not live, but it's going to be aired a little later on the NAGLREP Facebook page. So I'm Julie Nelson. I'm with eXp Realty in Austin, Texas. I was the founder of the Austin chapter and a part of the NAGLREP National Advisory Board. So just a little, that's enough about me. Let's jump onto the panel. So our topic is continuing to welcome the LGBT community to real estate. So the first couple questions I'm going to ask are really kind of overall for the group. Anthony, you asked this question, so I'm going to let you give the first stab to it, but I want this question to be a group question because it's a good overall question to get things started. And so the question was, or is, how do we showcase real estate as a viable job to the LGBT business community and bring more LGBT agents into the industry?
I always love this question because to me it seems like an obvious answer. Obviously. But I think the way you do that is you do the reach out. You make sure that your brand and your brokerage is visible at places, whether it be a pride event or an event like this, and then you make sure that you are hospitable and inviting to have people in this LGBTQ community join your shop. And I think what happens is when you're comfortable to be someplace and the people who are there are inviting and welcoming to have you there, you're more inclined to have more people join you. And I think it's a pretty simple answer to me, but I think that's a really good start. It's just be the place that people want to be, whether it's LGBTQ or others, and then be at the places where those people are and show that you are a welcoming environment for them and everyone else.
Sure. So showing up and participating and being welcoming.
And being welcoming. I think that's ultimately it, is being welcoming, and not only yourself, but your entire organization. Because sometimes we will find that you've got a strong leader who is perfectly open to having a very diverse and open workplace, but you may have one or two people on your team that maybe don't share those same opinions, and then making some tough decisions if that's not going to be what you want it to be. Because ultimately, if you want members of this community or any community to be there, you've got to make it a hospitable environment where they can not only just be there and survive, but actually thrive in the environment.
Yeah, I would jump in and agree. I mean, I think the public support goes a long way. I think from an industry perspective, unfortunately, we have a long way to go. If you look at the results of the, NAGLREP LGBT real estate report that Jeff just published, just with the fear of discrimination in the home buying process. So I agree with you, Anthony. The public support, all of us have been, proud sponsors of NAGLREP, us since inception for many years. Creating that safe place, I think ERGs, employee resource groups, are a great way to also welcome and create that safe place for both employees and agents. The support from the top is critical, and taking action. Recently we hosted, along with many other CEOs across the country, so multiple industries, something called the Day of Understanding, and it was really to capture the hearts and minds of employees as it pertains to unconscious bias and cultural competency. And that was just a great beginning for a country to really come together for one day and really focus on how important this is.
I'm sorry, and I just want to also pipe in on Tam. First of all, virtual hugs to all of you, because it's so weird not seeing you in person. I miss every one of you. And Julie, Jeff, thank you for hosting this panel and for allowing us to be part of it. But I could not agree more with our speakers. I think one of the things that I love about NAGLREP is the fact that, we are all united here as a group. And the fact that the NAGLREP report that was just released discussed that the fact that a lot of the LGBT community are small business owners. In fact, that it's almost inbred in them that they're entrepreneurs. So the real estate industry is the perfect place for the LGBT community to get involved with, right? To Anthony's point, what a great position, what a great role, what a great opportunity, especially since there is that felt discrimination among the LGBT community. So let's teach, let's be involved, we are the gatekeepers of the housing and of the American dream, and that dream is live in all of us, as you can see in that NAGLREP report. So I think, you know, making sure that we're always offering the opportunities to be, you know, to let people know, to sponsor and to be behind the Equality Act. All those things are extremely important as we, as leaders, and it does start from the top. I agree with, you know, Tanya in that you've got to have Gino, our leadership, you know, that really believes in this and also supports, you know, the LGBT community from that perspective. Chris Stewart and Alan Dalton, who are our CEOs with Berkshire Hathaway and Real Living. So it starts there, and then to empower us, our roles as diversity and inclusion representatives, to make sure we get that message across every single franchise owner, because it's not just on the top, it's the franchise owners where we have to relay that message to make sure that they operate in the same way with the same values and the same mission that we all have together.
And make the tough decisions if they're not willing to be educated, because
Absolutely.
ultimately you have to decide what your brand or what your brokerage is going to stand for. And if it's not going to stand for discriminating or not allowing or not welcoming people into your brand, then make those decisions.
I completely agree. I think that you need to make sure also, though, we need to have more examples, more successful examples, because people become what they see they can be. And so if you have women CEOs, then more women think that they can become a CEO, right? So I think we need to share more success stories and have them out there and be very visible. And also from a government standpoint, every time we pass something that actually makes everyone feel included more, we need to overshare that. We need to make sure that from a public relations standpoint, we're really oversharing that so that everybody is aware, because that is key, is awareness. You want to see a reflection of yourself in a success story that you can believe in, and because people become what we tell them they can be.
Yeah.
I love how everyone is bringing up these,
yeah, go
I
ahead.
love how everyone's bringing up this report. I made sure I printed it out. Everyone's really covered a lot of points that I wanted to bring up, so I won't echo them, and for time. But it's just quite remarkable that 95%. It's the top concern for safety and being welcome in the housing industry, and it's the same thing for the place that you work. And so when we look at our company, we really need to think about what is that overall experience. It's more than our commission splits. It's more than our tools and our resources. It's really about what it's like to be with our company. And that culture spreads from the top down to the bottom.
I'll just add real quick. I agree with everything that everybody's saying. And yeah, that's kind of why we wanted to get involved in co-sponsoring the report this year. But we look at this from two major fronts. Certainly, what does the brand do from the top down, that type of thing, but really encouraging our brokers to look at their own community. Are you visible in the community? Are you aware of the makeup of your community? And be visible, be engaged, get involved, that sort of thing. And that seems to really has helped in the overall awareness, plus a better understanding, and they see the data that backs up where they need to spend their time.
And there's no doubt when someone sees someone like themselves or an ally at a march or at an event, then they realize that, wait, this is going to be a place that I'm welcome. And that's something that says so much. People want to go where they feel good, where they feel comfortable, certainly not where they feel unsafe.
And I love what
the real
Tami
estate
said.
community, the real estate community reflects exactly what that report said, is they move away from their hometown to find a comfortable area. We had the great speaker last year at the policy meeting that talked about when she joined Coldwell Banker, how that was very comfortable for her to support, the community.
And I just want to echo a point that Tami made. One of our key focuses is, we're all educating as we're sharing, but it's really important to elevate and share those successes, highlight, our top LGBT plus agents. We have we're trying to do that through Agents of Change events. We're trying to sponsor top, LGBT reports, lists, success stories. I think that is so important, and really create that safe space and that celebratory type moment for so many that represent us across all of our businesses.
I wanted to add one more thing, and that is that we need to have it flow from every layer, right? Every layer of our organizations. Yes, leadership, it starts with leadership and making sure that everybody feels welcome, but it has to be in your marketing and your public relations. They need to see that it isn't always a heterosexual couple that's in an ad. They need to see that there is diversity, that they actually see a reflection of themselves for home buyers and sellers, as well as for people that we want to have join as agents and to be part of our community. We need to make sure that they see that reflection all the way through. It's literally layered through absolutely every facet of what it is that we do.
That's a good transition to, thank you, Tami, to the next question. And this is really an overall question as well. And really both Teresa, I know you all submitted some questions. I'm going to do my best to weave them into a nice flow here for good conversation. Both Teresa and Scott really kind of submitted a similar version of this question, but I know that y'all can touch on it. So Teresa, I'm going to aim this at you initially. How is but for all of you, how is your brokerage able to show up or to show support for the LGBT community within your organization, within your brokerage, within your company?
Right, and that's so important to make sure that you do reflect the communities that we're seeing out. And so, you know, it starts with that marketing, right? To make sure that everything we do that's on social media, that's in our marketing materials that we share with our agents, on our listing presentations, that, you know, marketing proposals, that everything has, you know, the LGBT community reflected within it, because you want to be able to see, you know, who you are. And I think that's extremely important. Also making sure that you have within your company opportunities to have like social chatter groups, you know, agent recognition, all the things that I know, Tanya, you mentioned as well, and Tami as well. So, you know, making sure that we have chatter groups that are involved and that are part of the community so that people can exchange leads and can exchange ideas and can talk about important information that's happening in their marketplace. I'm very proud of a lot of our, you know, agents that are working, and also our management across the networks that are very involved with the LGBT community themselves, whether they're allies or they themselves are very involved, whether they're running NAGLREP chapters, whether they're involved in their communities with like Wayne Woodyard, who did so much work last year in making sure that the voice of discrimination was heard in their own California market. So all these things are extremely important. One of the things that I think too is, and Tanya mentioned it, is we are constantly doing fair housing and unconscious bias training, because I think that's where it starts. It all starts with education and making sure people understand, hey, we're not different. We're all unique. We're all the same. We all have the same beliefs. We all have the same love, right, for people, and to make sure that people understand that. So education, and I think, you know, one of the things I'm very proud of, I want to mention Alex Cruz, who is teaching a course in his market in Ohio that he just got approved, and he's one of our agents. And just making sure that education is constant and people are aware of the importance of belonging and embracing. And that's pretty much what we're doing on our level.
Scott?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, so if you don't know, I'm already involved with the 1EXP group of our company, and I actually just went back to our agents in preparation for this today, and I kind of boiled it down. We've got some consistent themes, but I've got kind of 4 areas. One is the understanding of our agents. We're currently doing a survey and a census to really understand what the needs are, because they do change. We really want to know what's going on and what the issues are. Educating, it's been mentioned already here. We've got constant brain boosts going on. In fact, we have an unconscious bias class going on today. In fact, the other one is connecting. So using our workplace group, we've got a very vibrant group of over 450 agents in that. It's a very private group, and they're very active. And our staff and our executive leadership is also involved in that group. And then lastly, that integration through everything in our company. Most people will know that our company works in an avatar world, in a 3D based model. And so we must, transform our avatars to reflect the different religions, genders, and what have you. So making sure that's permeating through our whole company, even in our technology.
I'd love to just, hone in on a couple of points I think I'm hearing from all of us, but I think they're important principles that, we at least at Realogy live by, and that is, our commitment to the LGBT plus community is an obligation, right? It's an obligation we view it to society and to the industry at large. And I think having that mindset is critical because that trickles down obviously from leadership to employees to brokerages and franchise owners and ultimately through agents. I think that's important to keep top of mind. And we're in the service business, right? We're servicing people. And if we can't properly do that, then we shouldn't be in the business. I mean, that's at the end of the day, the core of why I think we're all so focused on this and other markets. But I want to commend Teresa. I know that, April's Fair Housing Month, right? You mentioned Fair Housing Month, and I think that it's so easy to get distracted with COVID. Right now, we're all responding to this crisis. We're trying to lead our companies through, our people through, being there for our teams and our families. And to, for us, we just relaunched launched, I should say, a new fair housing training because right now, in the midst of a crisis, it is so critically important. And I know that you and Berkshire Hathaway acknowledged Fair Housing Month, and I think that was really important, right? Because we can get easily distracted, but now more than ever, it's important to remind everyone in our business why this is so important.
Yeah, the momentum created by the Long Island report, of course, I think made everybody go back, and NAR used the phrase ACT, accountability, cultural shift, and training, and we all had to step up our game in that space. I'll share between Tanya and Teresa and others, you guys have, provided great guidance for us to really step up our game in terms of awareness and interaction. And the one thing that's been the most positive over the last, I guess we've been involved about 3 years, is creating an environment so that the LGBT community within RE/MAX can find each other. And things like meetups at the convention or, Facebook page. Now we've got over 100, active members. So they're starting to find each other. And then they're able to, I think, repurpose what they do see at the corporate level, whether it's articles or, a feature on a champion like Sam Olsen out in Reno, things like that really resonate, I think, probably with more credibility when it's peer-to-peer than just us putting a brand on something. So I thank you for all your support.
I think we also need to make sure that we personalize this. It is so important for us to, the key two words, right? Diversity and inclusion. And that means we need to include everybody. If we are only, and we witness it all the time, right? You go to a Board of Realtors event and everybody's sitting with their same office, right? All of the people they're comfortable around. We have this unconscious bias from how we grew up, how we were raised, and who we were surrounded with. And so if we don't ever step out of our comfort zone and have conversations with other people and really actively listen and pay attention, we're not going to make a shift. If we only hang around with people that have the same opinion as us and agree with everything that we have to say and everything we've been raised around, we're never going to change this and make it as open as it absolutely needs to be so that everyone feels included. And I think that word inclusion is so important. Yes, we need to have special spots so that everyone has people, like-minded people and people that are alike so they know that they're part of a community. But we really need to expand that so everyone is part of the same community and we all connect. We're witnessing it now with COVID, right? That there's two opposing sides and man, is it extreme. But when it's extreme like that and everybody's just protesting and yelling and angry and we see all this hate and fear and extremes, that's not going to change a thing. I'm from Boston, so, we have our signs out right now that say, stay wicked far apart. And so, that are all across the highways and all that sort of stuff. But one of the people, love him or hate him, Ted Kennedy, who came from Massachusetts, he had a magical way of reaching across the aisle and listening to the other person and finding out what was important to them. And when he did, and he found out what was important to them, he found a way to connect the two dots so that everybody felt more connected and everyone felt heard. And I think that is so important. If we just stay in our own little group all the time and we don't come out and have conversations and make everyone comfortable so that this isn't even, I would love to have it be that at some point we don't even have to have this conversation, right?
Wouldn't that be nice? I just want to add to the point there, because I think that inclusion, I want to make sure I say this correctly, but I think it can go both ways. And I think the message has kind of been there. You know, without any question, we need our groups so we can be with our tribe, if you will, and see that there are other people like ourselves in an organization. But it's also very important that we invite the allies into those groups so they also understand that, you know, we are just people. I'll use an example from our brand. Each year we host a big convention like many of the brands do. And we have all of our different, you know, groupings. And this year we had our NAGLREP group, you know, got together. And now we're talking about a brand with about 1,000 people at our event, and we still had close to, you know, 50, 75 people who were part of the NAGLREP community at this event. In the past, we've always given that group its own little private room someplace. And this year I said, no, I want it to be right in the middle of the hotel lobby, right in the middle of everything to have our event. And I had several people from the NAGLREP community, our group, come up to me and said, I can't believe you all wouldn't give us a private room. And I said, and I looked at them and I said, so you're telling me I should have taken all of the gays and put them in a room far away from everyone? And they went, well, no, we didn't mean that. And I said, no, you know, that was kind of my intent, though, is that everyone else then could kind of, you know, see this group, be around this group, interact with this group, and I think it actually turned out to be a good idea. So I do think that inclusion has to go both ways, not only for us to have our tribes and to be welcomed, but also for us then to be welcoming so we can actually interact and intermingle with everyone. Because ultimately, when you've got the friend or you've got the family member, when you've got the client, that's when you start like going, wait a minute, I kind of like this person. I kind of like working with this person or being with this person. And maybe some of my stereotypes can start to subside.
Anthony, I think that really that really helps with the unconscious bias, because you put your people right in the middle of the room, and it just kind of it forces the interaction, and we recognize our similarities before we recognize our differences in that environment. So
well said.
Yeah. So kudos,
Anthony. It's a great thing. We did our mixer with our NAGLREP members during our convention, and you know, even though there was a few more people at the convention, we put it right outside the welcome reception in a bar, and people were going by, go, oh yeah, well I'm an ally. Hey, what's going on over there? And it made a big difference. So yeah, great idea.
And we were able to, thankfully, we had our conference, Berkshire did, in March, right before all this happened, and we were able to get together. And what I did this year is I said, look, we're going to include every group that's part of our organization, everything from the women, from vets to LGBT, to Hispanics, to Asian, and we held one huge event. It was the funnest thing that we've ever done. And that's the similarity biases that we're talking about that Tami just kind of put together, have a huge party and celebrate our uniquenesses, but also learn from each other. I learned how to Bollywood, you know, so these are things that all of us learned, and it was fun because we were all together and we were all there learning from each other and accepting each other, and more importantly, embracing each other.
And again, what you've done, Teresa, Tanya, the rest of the people on this call, you know, that is the kind of leadership we need in this industry. That is exactly the kind of things that do allow us to see our biases when they do exist, and we all have our biases, but also, you know, how we can break those down. And I celebrate both of you for what you've accomplished in your brand and everyone else as well.
Thank you, Anthony. You know, I think a shift, and I think we're all saying this on this call today. We've been focused on sort of demographic shifts and what our local markets look like, and that's really important. And fair housing, clearly very important as well. But I do think that we're all saying inclusion and this unconscious bias, like really, again, winning the hearts and the minds of anyone that's representing this industry is sort of where we need to focus our efforts in order to get to creating that safe place, understanding one another, you know, deeply connecting so that we can properly service everyone as we should be. And, you know, if you notice, and again, I commend Jeff and just the NAGLREP network, for us that are, right, we're all involved in the members only site, you see some of the struggles that the NAGLREP members that even represent all of our companies still go through. So I think that there's that type of work that needs to be done so we can get to a better place collectively.
Tanya, why would you say, and this was related to one of your questions, but it's like, why is now an even more critical time for us to really double down on the industry's support of LGBT?
Yeah, I think we touched upon it a bit. I mean, you just see the divide, unfortunately, in the country right now, right, through the adversity that we're dealing with. And, you know, you see hate crimes and political positioning and everything in between. And so I think we have to stand firm and double down now more than ever, protect jobs, as an example, protect our industry, you know, not allow all of the work that we've all done to be impacted and setting us back further versus, you know, having it really strengthen us. And so, you know, again, even supporting NAGLREP and other organizations, we're all faced with, you know, a deficit, right? We're struggling. And so I think that we have to just keep these important priorities top of mind and double down on what we're doing. And, you know, even things like Anthony mentioned, right? We need to show up at Pride. There's no Pride this year. What are we going to do? We have to come together and make something happen, right? And so that's really what I mean in doubling down. And doubling down, I think in the long term, is simply put, you know, zero tolerance. We have to get to a zero tolerance situation. And again, you know, we have work to do.
And then to your point, Tanya, not only get to that, which is obviously first and foremost, but then promote that your group, your agency, your brokerage, your brand is there and wants to go there. One thing I'm very proud of our shops. You know, we have about 200 of our retail shops here in the U.S. And last year during Pride, the number of our shops who actually displayed flags or created displays to really show that Engel and Völkers in that community was supportive of our community. You know, that sends a message not only to your consumers, which I believe is positive in most markets, but it also sends a message to the advisors that you're wanting to draw into your brands.
You know, something that we hold ourselves accountable to as a company, and we all should, and it's a fascinating story how it came my way years ago, but I'll leave that for another time, is the CEI survey, right? The Corporate Equality Index. And every year, because of the importance of that survey through the HRC, we as a company hold ourselves accountable to improving our overall scores. It's a very, very important metric to us. So for those that, you know, maybe don't do that or haven't engaged with HRC, it's a great tool because it holds you accountable to those standards.
And I love that, Tanya. And Julie, one of the things I think that, you know, that you mentioned in the question is, you know, the one thing that COVID, I think, has taught us all is it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't discriminate against race, creed, nationality, religion, sexual orientation, or even age, right? So I think that if we learn anything from this, it's also, as you heard John Lovitz say this morning with his, you know, that this is a reminder that, you know, it often takes universal threats to bring our universe together, and that it reminds us all that we're all one people. And when we recover, I hope that we will continue to remember that we are one people in our communities, and one people in the workplace. I think that's what the importance of all this, and I hope that we will continue on this track.
That's good. Let's talk about involvement with NAGLREP. Mike, I know your organization has become involved with NAGLREP. What are some things that y'all have learned or implemented as part of that, I guess, part of that partnership?
Yeah, no, Julie, thank you. Yeah, RE/MAX Associates asked us, you know, for a couple of years, hey, what about NAGLREP? What do you know about it, and so on. And quite honestly, when we attended the first meeting, it was so encouraging and motivational for us to be welcomed into the NAGLREP community. But it took us a little time to learn, hey, what are some of the, you know, actual implementation or activations that we can do? And over the last couple of years, as I mentioned, we've done, you know, Facebook page and meetups and the employee resource group, that kind of, strategy has really helped us. But we also worked hard to identify the champions in the network. Who are the ones that are visible, that are very successful brokers, that kind of create that motivation for others to be, to network with each other and so on. But this year, then that was our drive behind co-sponsoring the NAGLREP housing report, is we felt like if we could put our name on such a credible resource, that not only us, but all the other partners would get behind that to position how important this data is. We do the same thing with ARIA, and we do the glossary with NAREP. And those tools have become sort of our storyline, if you will, to share, inclusion and the demographic studies and the engagement. So it's been great for the brand. Quite honestly, we just started sponsoring the Pride event, the last couple of years, and creating more visibility there. But as you guys mentioned, the Fair Housing Initiative this year, the last 6 or 8 months, has really been a great way to escalate all of these programs, both not to our network, but really the real estate community. On COVID-19, one of the best quotes I've heard over the last few weeks has been, "Now's the time to make friends, not be selling everything," and let's build our relationships. Let's work on those relationships, because coming out of this, especially in real estate, we are in it together, and it's going to take so much. I like the phrase co-opetition. We cooperate on deals, we work hard for families, but we compete in the space. But I think in this environment, especially with LGBT community, it's so important for all of us to share ideas like we're doing, and to get our network to continue to deliver at the local level. So yeah, thanks.
That's right. I mean, from a partnership standpoint, we just go way back with NAGLREP. I think that we've partnered together along the way through crises, right, as we are now, through the financial crisis. We've had a long-standing relationship with NAGLREP. I think it's 12, 13 years, really, since its inception. And we view it in many different ways. Thought partnership, right, with Jeff and the members. In some cases, NAGLREP has brought us closer to some of our LGBT agents and vice versa. We obviously encourage membership and partnership, and even on strategic initiatives. Mike, to your point about different reports and surveys that we've come together and collaborated on, and educational opportunities to and from, right, sharing content so that we're educating one another. For us, it's been an exceptional partnership. And even, Jeff and I spoke the other day, because of Pride being canceled this year, and we were sponsors last year for World Pride. What can we do together, right, to not have that go away for so many of our members, that it's really important to. So, I just think that's a great example. And I love, Mike, your comments of us as industry leaders coming together to help facilitate that, as friends.
We did a program in Europe called Digital Solidarity, and it was just simply our way to deliver training and education across all topics to the entire real estate community. And the response on that was really overwhelming. So I think that example, and one of the things I've asked Jeff about is for us to perhaps with NAGLREP to create a course on, guidance on working with the LGBT community, because we know realtors want step 1, 2, and 3. They want it served up that way.
Simplicity, right, Mike?
Yep.
That's right.
We have an incredible opportunity right now with everybody sheltering in place, or the majority of people sheltering in place. We have an incredible opportunity to take an awful lot of things viral, to share podcasts that will help everybody to get educated and get more information, to share laws that have passed and that have changed things and made things for the better, but also to even sound out when something is not okay, to be able to speak up and share that, and an unbelievable opportunity to share success stories. All of us connect.
We created,
really take it viral.
Yeah, I think that's a great thought. We've created a playbook, to your point, Mike and Tami both, in partnership with NAGLREP, on how to properly service the LGBT community. Happy to share that, with all of you to really, again, come together and help accelerate that educational process.
Yeah. Scott, can you comment on the One EXP and explain what that initiative is.
Yeah, so One EXP is really a grassroots. It started from the agents, the agent owners. It's certainly supported from the company, but it's all the different diverse groups have their own group, and then they come together through One EXP to have a voice. And so they meet regularly, and they challenge the staff and the company to go in certain directions. And then we also work with them as well to support all of our agents, whether it be training, education, but also when we do see incidences where our staff or anyone in the community, agents have a discriminatory statement, we rally around that and we take care of that. So that's really what One EXP is about. And, they're a great group. Hi, guys. I'm sure they're watching today.
Well, and can I mention too, because I know we talked about the digital events, and I think it's important too that I know on June 27th, there is what's called, I think it's called Pride Together, an event that's going to be hosted nationally. And I think it'll be very, very nice for all of us to join into that group and also support, show our colors, show our rainbows, wear everything so that we can be involved and show the support that all of us together have for the LGBTQ community. So I'm looking forward to that event. I know I've seen that being advertised and promoted, and I think it'll be a great thing for all of us to get involved with as well.
What are some things that y'all are doing? So June is Pride Month, and I don't think we're going to have a parade to march in, not in person. So what are some things that y'all have planned for Pride Month? What's virtual Pride look like in your organization?
So we're working on that. We spoke with Jeff. We have another follow-up meeting next week. Something along the lines of a virtual Pride, a toast to celebrate, to point earlier, the great successes of the LGBT plus agent population across the industry at large. And also we've had these agents of change events locally in markets. And it's amazing because, when you put something on that's relatively new from a conceptual standpoint and you see that there's standing room only, that there's clearly a need. So we bring our agents of change, our LGBT, our Hispanic, et cetera, agents together and really highlight their successes. It's a mastermind. So we're looking at bringing those events that we've had to date, in person, virtually, specifically for Pride Month in June. So planning for that now.
And we're doing the same. We're planning, just like Tanya mentioned, and also kind of highlighting agents who want to be highlighted, right? And what they do and the support that they offer the communities, as well as showing, I think the best way right now that we can do it is digitally, right? Showing our banners. I remember when we all showed on Facebook the colors, the rainbow. So doing things like that, where we can show the support the entire month of June, but every day, right, on how we support the communities locally and also through our network. Creating Facebook covers as well, and web pages, banners, and color banners, supporting that in our outdoors, in our windows, playing games in our neighborhoods of spot flags, the supporters of the LGBT community. I think all of that, along with the leadership that we have on the local level, who will also be holding events across their networks, I think that will be a great way for us to celebrate Pride, even though we can't physically be there on the streets with a parade, right? But just reflecting, but also sharing the story of where the Pride event first started, and I think that's important too, education.
And I think, obviously doing videos, and a lot of us are doing banners and spreading the word, but I think one of the things to be really optimistic about at this point in time is that more people are paying attention. I know that all of us travel a lot and we do a lot of speaking engagements. Myself, my last speaking engagement was on Friday the 13th of March. And then I was the last flight out of Rochester, New York, right? And so I had 50 speaking engagements canceled between March and April. And so we decided to take those speaking engagements viral anywhere that anyone was willing to do it. And the first one was literally the following week. And there would have been 400 to 500 people in that room. And it turned out that more than 3,000 people, a 2-hour event, they viewed it in its entirety. So this is a killer opportunity for us to be able to spread the word.
That's right.
Wider, farther, get so much more reach, and encourage our people to share as well, so that we can really take this exponentially across the globe.
Let's do this. We have 5 minutes left, so I want to keep this solid. So that's probably a nice amount of time to see if you all have just kind of some closing statements, anything that you had scribbled for your notes that you absolutely wanted to get in. So we've got the 5-minute bell. So what do you, how do you want to use that 5 minutes in communicating to our NAGLREP world, which this will be on the page later today?
I had the word, I love this phrase of courageous leadership. I mean, you know, we've seen a lot of amazing leaders really rise to the occasion during this COVID crisis. We've seen a lot of unexpected leaders also rise. And I think that's something we've seen in our community for years and years and years. And I think it's just important that all of us, whatever our role is in this challenge, I guess, is that we have more courage to stand up and be who we are, be proud of who we are, to reach out to others who maybe don't understand and educate. I think everything that this group has said is extremely powerful, but it's even more powerful if everyone who is listening to this actually now goes back and does one thing more than they were doing before. And if you can do 2 or 3 things more, that's even more powerful. You know, I'm assuming the reason that we're not live right now is because there are so many people, to your point, Tami, there are so many people who wanted to watch this event on Facebook that we broke Facebook today. But I know we're all going to be on here, and we're going to watch this. We're going to listen to it. So let's just do what we're talking about. Let's actually take action. That's the real power here.
I want to say one thing, and that is that it's not about being right. It's about being successful. So we don't have to stand up and just prove our point. And, you know, we can see an awful lot of anger and an awful lot of hate when it goes in those directions of just needing to prove yourself and prove yourself to be right. It's about being successful. Let's figure out ways that we can really be successful and reach across, and about that end game, get some really great results out of this.
I would add, just a crisis is a terrible thing to waste, right? So let's leverage this opportunity and look at the silver linings in our ability to reach so many more than we could pre-COVID. And the second is to all of our NAGLREP members to hold us accountable to what we say we're going to do.
Hear, hear.
Yeah.
I think my summary on this is, again, encouraging the membership, be active, be visible, be engaged. But, you know, for us to find the champions in each of our networks and tell their stories, show that leadership, and use all the power of, you know, a game changer certainly is going to be the Zoom or teleconference environment. I mean, we've held events for 3,000 people on Zoom, so we know it works. But, you know, all of us together sharing the story, the training, the education, and keep growing, the support of NAGLREP and sharing their information. So these great interviews, I think that's our responsibility. So thanks, you know, for including us.
And for me, it's just, you know, continue the cooperation that we see today. I think that is so important. All of us here together, united and behind, you know, the one mission. So I think it's really important that we continue to educate, that we continue to do the unconscious bias training, that we continue to support fair housing, not just in April, but every month, every day of the year. And more importantly, that we all combine and get together behind the Equality Act so that we can all support and make sure that this becomes the law of the land, and that we make sure that everyone gets embraced and feel fair, that they're getting fair treatment. I think that's what's important, and that's what I'd love to say as we end this.
Nice.
Good stuff. I would just say, you know, we need to trust and love and empower our agents. We trust them to bring our buyers and sellers together. And so by growing the NAGLREP membership and just supporting our agents, they are going to be the ones that can make the big difference.
Nice. Very good. Well, I thank you all for joining. This has been, I love it when we are I guess, brokerage agnostic in our conversation, and just the unity of this conversation is just really means a lot. So thank you all for your contributions. And I think we're going to turn this back over to Mr. Jack Barry.
Thanks, Julie.
Thank you, Julie.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Julie.
You're
Great
welcome.
job.
Thank you, y'all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. That was quite a panel. I have a lot of notes from that one. Thanks a lot, Julie. Next up, we have the fabulous Jamie Zapata joining us from San Antonio, Texas. And Jamie is going to interview or talk with John Lovitz, who is the Senior Vice President of the National LGBT Chamber of Commerce. And they're going to talk about the business case for LGBT inclusion. Jamie, are you here? Or are you there?
Jamie, if you could please unmute yourself. We can't hear you.
Hi, sorry about that. Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me now?
There you go.
Hi, friends.
Yeah.
Hi, Jonathan. It's nice to see you.
Great to see you, Jamie.
Thank you. As a NAGLREP chapter president, a realtor, and a board member of the LGBT Chamber of Commerce here in San Antonio, I'm so excited to get your insight today. The National Association of Realtors has been active in sharing quite a bit of information about various federal relief bills and their impact on realtors. And the NGLCC ran an incredible seminar with the Small Business Administration about how your members can get federal assistance. Can you tell us what came out of that call and where we should be looking for help at all levels?
Great question, Jamie, and thanks to you, everyone at NAGLREP, for bringing us all together today. I wish we were in person, but very glad that we're all safe and doing the best we can together. Yeah, so this is just a great extension of the many conversations we've had between the NGLCC and NAGLREP about how we can support our own community and keep each other strong. Right as the crisis really began and we all began working from home, we organized a call at the NGLCC with over 800 LGBT business owners, many of whom are in real estate and related industries, to understand what's coming. What are in some of those relief bills? What are the federal, state, local, government, and also for-profit relief options that are out there? We've posted many of those at nglcc.org, our homepage. There's an entire landing page just for relief for LGBT business owners. And this can be particularly beneficial for, as we've said at the NAGLREP conference, for real estate professionals, because you have some of the most intimate relationships with people. You are the direct link between businesses and where they operate, between employers and where they live, folks who are relocating for new jobs. And both before and after this crisis, we're going to see a lot of people who need those resources, both the fiscal and the real estate related. So we certainly encourage folks to look at both what the SBA has available through things like the PPP program, through emergency relief directed at specific states through your state government, and even another great opportunity for agents and for local real estate professionals to connect with your local LGBT chamber. They're often the hub and the connection point between the mayor's office and the business community. And that's the perfect intersection for all of you at NAGLREP to be connecting with your local affiliate, as many of them have direct resources from us at the national level, as well as your local business partners. And it's also important to utilize not just the fiscal stimulus, but also the resources like, for example, many corporations who are adding resources just to help our businesses through this moment, like UPS, for example, helping business owners who have goods and services that need to be shipped receive discounted or free shipping through this period as a way to keep driving business. And we've got many of those listed on our site, and we want to make sure that those are available to anyone in the NAGLREP network who might be trying to get information to your stakeholders, helping your brokerages get in touch with your communities, etc. We are absolutely in this together, and all of our resources are meant to be shared.
That's great. I definitely need to take advantage of some of those resources myself. So thank you for sharing that. The NGLCC ran a powerful piece in the Advocate called Keeping the LGBTQ Community Financially Strong During COVID-19. What would you recommend the top tips from that article would be?
Well, as I was so fortunate to be able to say when we were all together in Palm Springs, and you better believe after a few weeks of sitting inside, I'm thinking a lot about being poolside with NAGLREP at Palm Springs. But we talked a lot about using our dollars, not just at Pride, but the other 364 days of the year to think smartly about how we use our money, not only to advocate for the causes and to support the companies who have our back, but also now in this time of crisis to use it to invest back in our community. And I think particularly for the real estate agents, I want to read a little blurb out of that article because I think this could really be helpful for you because this is a bit of a downturn. You aren't meeting in person, you're doing showings and things remotely, if at all. And now's the time to think about this. Many in our business community are using the time of slower day-to-day operations to focus on building your business back for the recovery ahead. Do you need a new business plan or a capability statement? Now's the perfect time. Have you been putting off getting the company logo or that killer website that your firm needs? Now is the perfect time. Have you been putting your life experience and skills to work to start and thinking about starting a small business but have never gotten that far? Now is the perfect time. And best of all, everything you need from business coaches to work from home technology to meal prep to manufacturers to flyers and printers and everything else you're thinking of can be sourced from our own LGBT community. And when we invest back in ourselves, we all come out stronger on the other side. We LGBT people are women, we're people of color, we have disabilities, we're veterans, we're immigrants. So supporting our business community means supporting every American business community. And we have to commit ourselves to shopping small, shopping local, supporting our local nonprofits if we're able, because we are all going to have to link arms to get through this.
That's true. That's true. I definitely have a lot of free time on my hands now to focus on starting or building my business in different ways. So that's great advice. Thank you. I'm going to have to read that article for sure. Now that you mentioned it, the NGLCC and its affiliates have been running a national campaign with the message to shop small, shop local, and shop LGBT. How can real estate professionals do that in our personal and professional lives? And how do we become part of the ecosystem of businesses being considered local and essential to our community's recovery?
Yeah, well, anything that keeps the lights on for a small business is part of that ecosystem of deeming something essential, right? I mean, we're helping, as we know, as LGBT employers, we, like all other minority and business owner communities, are 2 to 4 times more likely to hire other minorities in our own companies, to use minorities in our own supply chains. So as we're thinking consciously during this time about shopping small, about, if you're taking care of your team or thanking a client, send them a gift card from a local business that you found in the directory of your local LGBT chamber, which great chamber leaders like you, Jamie, have done a wonderful job of keeping updated. There are little steps that we can take to ensure that the companies in our family stay strong now. Like I said, buying those gift cards, investing in some of their long lead programs. Like I said, build that killer website for your company. That's going to take probably 3 months to do, but that keeps people in your local community who are from our community working between now and then. And that's going to help you come out stronger on the other side. I mean, literally everything you touch at your business, whether it's working from home or in the office, can be sourced from our own community through your local chambers, through the national organization, simply by asking the right questions about who's got our communities back, who is from and buying with our community. Because I think one of the things that we're seeing as a trend now is, as we always have seen, our community is very conscious about where and how we spend. We reward those who have our back, who stood with us long after marriage equality was the law of the land and is working with us to get the Equality Act and other things passed. So the same is true as we look at this COVID crisis. Who isn't doing more than just keeping the employees on? Who is actively sourcing? Who is reinvesting in local food banks and community programs? Those are the people we should be thinking about when we return to a sense of normal with our dollars and with our businesses' dollars. Who are we going to patronize and who are we going to want to work with who didn't stop working with and for us throughout this crisis? It's particularly true in the real estate industry. As I said, after this, the new normal of work is going to change. Folks are going to need those relocation specialists. We're going to need folks who certainly understand commercial real estate to help corporations understand Maybe it's better to keep the entire workplace on, but liquidate a headquarters. Things like that. These are questions that no one had really been braced to answer before. And I think no one's better than a NAGLREP representative in our community to help us understand what the challenges and opportunities are here to shop local, shop small, shop LGBT, and keep that money in our community so that we stay strong.
Definitely. I think that's a great message, because here in San Antonio, I actually have people that come up to me all the time and ask, like, who should I use that's LGBT friendly for, you know, X, Y, and Z. And I always recommend somebody from our directory here in San Antonio from the LGBT chamber to go to them first. And so definitely try to keep it in the family. So that's,
well,
those
there's
are great.
so many people doing so much good right now. And I want to encourage people to look at the NGLCC blog on our website, nglcc.org/blog, because we're telling the stories, not just of business owners everyone can be working with, but those who are pivoting to help. Like a lesbian-owned distillery who is a famous bourbon maker in the DC area who converted her stills to making hand sanitizer and hospital cleaner. To a mask maker who is a fabric and distribution specialist who is now making thousands of masks and sending them around the country to frontline workers who need them to be able to do some of this essential business. So we have folks in our own community who are heroes that we can all be supporting in our own way. And that's just another way to give back directly through our family.
Definitely. Yes, that's awesome. So as you mentioned earlier, like you said, one of the primary reasons for LGBT people to move or to relocate and to buy or rent a home is due to work opportunities and better inclusion policies. How can LGBT real estate professionals work closely with big and small businesses across the country to make our communities more attractive to LGBT people? And of course, our $917 billion annual buying power.
Thank you for throwing that in. It's never a wrong time to remind each other of our power, right? That that we spend as a community $917 billion on goods and services every year. And that buying power doesn't just have corporate America's attention, it has government's attention, because they're looking at where we're working with real estate professionals to pick up and move. That cities that have non-discrimination ordinances, that cities and states that have pro-equality stances have a higher GDP. It just underscores what we say at the NGLCC every day, that equality is good for business, period. It's true in the public sector, it's true in the private sector. And as we're helping our community come through this crisis, it's important to be reminding them of when they're looking at that next venture, whether it's the home they want to move in, the office they want to open, the next location for their business, etc., thinking about putting them in places, one, where it's safe and strong for our community to thrive, but also places where it may have been not historically recognized as a place that's pro-equality, but where if we work hard to demonstrate the strength of our businesses, the resilience of our community, we can come out even stronger. And I give the example of just before the crisis really hit hard, the most recent city to recognize our LGBT business enterprise certification was Louisville, Kentucky. A place that said, we want to buck the trend in the South of telling people that LGBTQ people cannot thrive here. There are businesses thriving in Louisville that are following on the tails of Nashville and over 20 cities in just the last 3 years that said, we see your community. You are just as valuable and welcome here as any other minority, as any other American business, period. And we as real estate and business professionals have to keep underscoring that when we meet with folks, telling them, hey, by the way, City X and City Y are very similar, except for what it means for your legal rights to be kicked out of your home, have your business credit line cut off, things that are still unfortunately very true in this country. And so as we're thinking with our dollars and thinking with our real estate opportunities, we can be using that as leverage to remind people that we still have a long way to go for full equality and that our dollars can be one of the strongest ways to get there.
Yeah, you know, here in San Antonio, we're in the South, and it's a little bit more progressive than people think. It's not as conservative as you would think, so that's great. It's getting better. And we do have a non-discrimination ordinance in San Antonio, but, you know, there's no federal protections for LGBT people, unfortunately. But maybe, you know, it's coming soon, right?
We're working on it.
Yeah, right. And, you know, one of the things that I'm excited about with the NGLCC is that you have the Trans Inclusion Task Force. And so that's amazing. And thank you for doing that, because as a trans woman, that's really important to me and people like myself. So thank you for that.
Thank you, and thanks for supporting it. I mean, just since we launched it's so much proof, and I think such a great message to everyone at NAGLREP to be reminded, even as you're looking at your literature for your firms and for your personal outreach to people, putting the words on paper makes a difference. Calling something out makes a difference. We've always been an inclusive organization that's been certifying lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender businesses, helping the entire spectrum of the community here and around the world. But when we specifically set out to say we have not done nearly enough to make sure there's visibility and opportunity for our trans brothers and sisters, by creating that task force, by putting a name to it, by putting resources behind it, people showed up. We always talk about that how we all want that seat at the table. Sometimes you have to put the name card in front of the seat so people know to take it. And once they're there, they're never going to leave it. And just in that first year, we had a 400% increase in the number of trans businesses who came to get certified through us. And I know a lot of that has to do with outreach from people like you, Jamie. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jonathan. Yes, I think things are going to keep getting better and better thanks to all of us. We have a few minutes left. Is there anything else that you'd like for everyone to know?
Pride is around the corner. I know we're all thinking about it. I know we're all wishing we could be out dancing in the streets and the parades. Unfortunately, this year is probably going to be different. Many prides have already been canceled. Many prides have been postponed to the fall, and people are looking at alternatives. I encourage everyone to work with your local LGBT chamber affiliate, connect with us at the NGLCC to talk about Pride Inside. We've been working with this is another way to make sure that your dollars are helping our community. We've got businesses that specialize in virtual video technology, in swag. If your firm was planning to march in your local Pride and you were going to have 200 people in t-shirts, still get the t-shirts and mail it to people and say, Coldwell Bankers supports Pride 2020 inside. This shirt was printed by an LGBT print shop. You're telling people that just because we weren't together doesn't mean we can't keep helping each other. And I think that's one of the most important messages of this COVID crisis, and something that Pride can certainly teach us as we go through this season. So I encourage everyone, as we're thinking about what we do next in a tactile way, be thinking about where we spend that money every day. And as we approach Pride season, think about how LGBT businesses can help support what you and your real estate networks are doing to tell that story.
Yes, I'm so upset that Pride was canceled, but it's Pride every day around here. So
absolutely.
We'll just have to have a bigger celebration. One thing I wanted to ask you, I think a lot of people aren't aware, is that one of the biggest things that we can do to promote our businesses as LGBT people is become LGBT's business certified. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So LGBT Business Enterprise Certification, LGBTBE, is one of the most valuable tools you can put in your tool belt. As women, as people of color, veterans, et cetera, have found through their certification programs over the years, it's not just about gaining access to billions, and I mean billions of dollars in contracts with corporations and government agencies. It's also about what it opens the door to for you as a business owner. There are funding programs available. There are microloans and grants. There are education programs like the Tuck School of Business Entrepreneur Program. There are scholarships and grad programs and all kinds of things where step one is you have to show us your certification so that we know you're a vetted and approved minority-owned company so you could be a part of it. So that's step one. It's a very easy process. It's an online process, and it's about us helping tell that story, because it's an important reminder to people that without being certified, agencies can't find you. LGBT people are not counted in the census. We're not a part of most economic data released by the SBA and the Commerce Department. So the NGLCC, in working with groups like NAGLREP, is helping get the word out that the only way for help to get to you is for you to be seen, counted, identified, and saying, I'm here. And we as business owners put $1.7 trillion into our economy every year. And that in itself is a heck of a statement when we're trying to assert our call for equal rights and equal economic opportunity. So get certified. And especially as we're looking at ways for real estate professionals to come out of this crisis even stronger, when corporations and even other business owners reach out to us at the NGLCC saying, I need someone who specializes in real estate in San Antonio, I know I can come to someone like Jamie who's certified and on our rosters. There may be hundreds more out there, but if we don't know about it, we can't make that referral. And if there's one thing I've learned from NAGLREP, it's a referral industry. So help us help you by getting certified.
Yes, yes, I need to do that myself. Is it a process that a realtor or a loan officer can do pretty easily to become certified?
You know, it's a lot like TurboTax, where you just sort of click through the process. There'll be green arrows or green checkboxes that say, perfect, you've uploaded this, we need the next thing. You've got a full support team now working remote out of Washington, D.C. that will help you every step of the way, including those at your local chamber, too, who are specialists in this, who can help you as well. So do it. It's easy, it's smart, it's simple, and it can be, you know, as one of our business owners recently told in an article to Inc. magazine, 80% of their business, and this is a multi-million-dollar raising LGBT-owned company, 80% of their business comes from corporate contracts they got because they're certified. So it's the difference between work and not, and we want to help everyone in our community get that work.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, that's good to know because I've needed to work on that myself, but you know, I'm always out selling houses, so.
Now's the perfect time.
I know, I need to work on that for sure, and I can mention that to our members here in San Antonio. And you know, I'm so disappointed that the NGLCC conference in Vegas is probably going to be rescheduled. Do you know when that's going to be?
We don't know yet. We haven't made any announcements yet, so stay tuned. The great thing is, and I appreciate you bringing up opportunities like that. You know, the conference is really a family reunion. We've had great NAGLREP representation over the years. As many of our members are parts of local, many of your members are parts of local affiliates, et cetera. But no matter what, technology is our friend. I want to encourage everyone here to take advantage of NGLCC Webinar Wednesdays, which are practical business tools and solutions by business owners for business owners. We also have on now Fridays this great program that we launched last week that was so impactful that we're now going to double it and do it every 2 weeks, is Sip and Pitch Fridays, where it's a Shark Tank-like pitch event where small businesses get feedback on how to present, how to encourage people to take advantage of their services, especially in the new digital age that we're in. You're getting feedback one-on-one from Fortune 100 corporate partners. And then you're also going to be able to have a whole last hour for what we're calling community and conversation, just like this, where we as a family can get together and just say what's on our minds, how do we help each other, and raise a glass, cocktail, mocktail, coffee, and anything else is welcome. But we just need to be there for each other. And as we were talking about with Pride, there's nothing more important than us standing with each other. So use these digital resources. And if anyone in the NAGLREP family has a webinar or a conversation about how to help drive business, particularly in the real estate industry, we'd love to share it on Webinar Wednesday. And that link is on our website.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jonathan. It's been a pleasure. I wish we had more time to speak, but our time's up now. We'll just have to stay engaged with you and the NGLCC going forward.
Thank you so much for all you do. NAGLREP, we're so grateful to have you in the NGLCC family. Thanks for the hard work. We'll see you all soon. Stay safe.
Thank you. Bye. Back to you, Jack.
Thanks, Jamie, and thanks, Jonathan. Everybody stay safe and continue moving forward. Next up, I am going to have a little interview with Brian. Is Brian on yet? Brian Green, are you here?
Yeah.
Are you there?
Yes.
Welcome. Brian is the Director of Fair Housing Policy and the Advocacy Group for the National Association of Realtors. Brian, how are you? Where are you calling in from?
I'm here in Washington, D.C.
Oh, very nice. Safe and sound, I hope?
Yes. Thanks for having me.
Joining us today.
Yeah.
We're going to get right to it, Brian. Tell us about your role at the National Association of Realtors as the Director of Fair Housing Policy and how this differs from the NAR Diversity Director position.
Yeah, sure. So NAR created this position last summer. I joined in the fall, and the focus is actually on fair housing, to break it out from what was in one of many issues that the Diversity Committee handled. And NAR created a Fair Housing Governance Committee with that. So we have 43 members who are now part of a dedicated Fair Housing Committee. And so it allows us to advance emerging fair housing issues. As you know, last year the Equality Act was put forward. Then there are always other fair housing amendments proposed, and we want to give increasing focus on that. Beyond what's proposed, in legislation, there's a raft of regulations that federal agencies put forward that either directly deal with fair housing or have an impact on fair housing. And this committee allows us to respond to proposed regulations as well, and to advance member interest on fair housing issues overall.
Nice. And do you folks meet? Do you telemeet? Have teleconferences normally outside of coronavirus?
Yeah. So we, as a new committee, are meeting. Well, we were planning to meet in person for the first time during NAR's mid-year meeting. We have a mid-year legislative meeting here in Washington, which has started now. But we were expecting to meet in person for the first time this May. We did have our inaugural committee meeting just a few months ago in February, and that was virtual for then, pre-coronavirus, really just as the first cases were popping up in the United States. So so our work is new. We've got a great committee, a very diverse committee, people representing a broad range of interests. We've got some NAGLREP members on the committee. So we're very much looking forward to digging into the fair housing issues that face us.
Nice. Now, the National Association of Realtors announced ACT earlier this year. What is that, and how does this how does this advance the LGBT rights in the housing industry?
Well, it advances all fair housing related issues. So as you all know, soon after I arrived, New York Newsday put out an expose of housing discrimination out on Long Island, where they alleged that 40% of minority groups were facing some form of discrimination in the home buying process. And NAGLREP also commented on that and pointed out that, of course, beyond minority groups, LGBT persons are facing discrimination as well. Broad range of populations still facing high levels of discrimination that we shouldn't face in 2020. And while the big news story was what was going on in Long Island, we knew that racial discrimination, LGBTQ discrimination, discrimination on a panoply of bases was occurring throughout the country still, and not just in Long Island. And so I think we recognized that the problem was manyfold, that this persists because there isn't sufficient accountability, that there's still a cultural problem, and still people need to be trained. But really the hierarchy of concerns were accountability, culture, training, and that makes that acronym ACT. And if I could just sort of build up from the bottom, I mean, training, realtors, real estate professionals get a lot of training and have been getting a lot of training since the passage of the Fair Housing Act, since the passage of the amendments. Our associations provide training and provide training even on those provisions of the law that are not covered, or rather those bases that are not currently covered under law, but are still prohibited under NAR's Code of Ethics. But that training aside, we evidently still have a problem. So culture, whether it's local culture, national culture, culture of companies, we recognize has a role, and that role can be positive or it can potentially perpetuate problems. So we know that we have to tackle that. So we're recognizing that even with the best training in the world, if you don't really embrace the values, you don't embrace the business principles behind it, the discrimination can still persist. And on top of that, you may still engage in that behavior if at the end of the day there's no accountability, if you don't think you're going to get caught. And so, whether you embrace the culture or not, the accountability makes sure you're doing the right thing. So act is intended to address all of those different aspects. You can almost think of it as a triangle that triangulates the problem to make sure that if you're falling down on any one, we may be able to bring you into compliance through another. And so with accountability, NAR said that we need to make sure that state licensing laws are strong and that they are actually enforced, that they're effective. And so insofar as states prohibit certain bases of discrimination, we need to make sure they're following through. But also if states are, if they have training requirements, that those training requirements be robust. Or maybe they don't have training requirements when they ought to. So if you take just states with LGBT laws, there are many people who have been in the business long before those laws were passed. Is there adequate training on those laws? Have states updated their training to make sure people understand those laws and follow through with those laws? Are there robust continuing education requirements to maintain your license? And do they include sufficient training on those laws? So we want all of that to be strong, but then as a backstop, if there's a report that someone's violating the law, is there a consequence? So all of that is important in terms of accountability. And then beyond that, we want to make sure that companies who want to comply and see their agents comply have more tools. And that's an area where we've said we want to make funds available for self-testing so that companies can see what their agents are doing and take corrective action on their own. So that's another big part of our accountability. And we recognize also that our code of ethics prohibits these things too. So it affords realtors an opportunity to be proactive and address these concerns so they can fulfill their ethical requirements. So the accountability is a big part. The cultural part, we want to celebrate leaders, people who are actually doing the right thing. We find that, if people hear that their peers are making money by doing the right thing, that may lead to willing compliance. An interesting thing we found out in Long Island, they tested 12 companies and they had findings against 10, but there were 2 they had no findings against. And they tested multiple agents, all operating in the same market. They're collectively responsible for 50% of the sales out in Long Island. So if people are doing well and they're, doing it without doing some of the other things, for whatever reasons they're doing them, if they're doing them and making money, we can learn from that. And I think especially in the LGBTQ space, we'd love to be able to hold up folks who are doing the right thing.
That's great. And the education part, I just, from a personal experience, I started to teach at Temple University in Philadelphia. And they're part of the requirement before I could teach my first class was to take a diversity and they call it sexual harassment seminar, really. It's about a 3-hour online, it was a 3-hour online class. And from my first response personally was, I don't need that, I'm gay. Why do I know this already? But there were a lot of things in there that I was not aware of. And until this stuff gets brought, gets put out front and center, like with the work that you're doing, a lot of us ourselves are like, oh no, I'm good, I got this. And I need to stay open for this education and for the awareness. I need to be there for that.
Right. And we all have biases that we may not even be aware of. So another big part of the ACT initiative under the T, under training, is implicit bias training, what some people call unconscious bias training. Yeah. And there are some people who provide this training who really get to these issues in a non-confrontational way, but to help elicit the biases that we all have. So we expect to have that kind of training available online very soon, and we hope to expand that to a larger curriculum that brokers can tap into.
Nice. So the brokers will be able to, it'll be like a course that a broker can
Yes. So, so the first thing we're going to do is sort of an overview or a teaser, if you will, 1 hour training online, a video that provides the basics of this training. Then beyond that, we are going to provide a 3-hour training curriculum so that brokers can go deeper, and we're going to do a train the trainer. So train brokers then to deliver this at their companies. And so, and then there are going to be different facets to it. Obviously, there's a lot to cover under many different bases, but we're going to focus on the Fair Housing Act and LGBTQ, which is prohibited under our Code of Ethics. So to make sure that brokers have that, and we think that from a training perspective, folks are going to follow what their brokers say. And so again, you know, the training helps reinforce a positive culture in a company.
Definitely. Well, that's great. Now, April, Fair Housing Month. How's you know, NAR doing this with you know, among our new reality with, you know, the coronavirus?
Yeah.
How's NAR, you know, operating?
Well, yeah, you know, as we were planning for Fair Housing Month, we recognized very quickly that we weren't going to be out doing, you know, trainings, doing in-person observations of the month. And so we quickly adapted to what we called Fair Housing Month at Home. And we worked to provide resources online that with all of us indoors, or indoors more than we would normally be, that we could take advantage of that time in front of our computers and dial up some fair housing resources and training that we could use. So I mentioned the implicit bias training being one of the items that we hope within Fair Housing Month, the day we have left, we hope to be able to put online. But then we have a raft of books, podcasts, and even films that we're recommending people catch, you know, during this time, and maybe even arrange discussion groups around. So we provided those resources early in the month. Many associations have been utilizing them and have been, you know, doing watch parties even around some of the films. There was a film that came out just before we all went on lockdown called The Banker that highlights the history of redlining and other housing discrimination in an entertaining way. Samuel L. Jackson's in this major motion picture about two African-American entrepreneurs who try to get around redlining, become bankers and make credit available to African-American communities looking to buy homes. I caught it in the movie theater just before we all shut down. So that's on Apple TV, and some folks are using that as the basis for a discussion group. So there are all kinds of resources like that. And now that we have it up there, even though Fair Housing Month is concluding, we're going to continue to curate it and offer other resources.
Nice. What fair housing issues are emerging that you see NAR trying to, you know, where they're going after, that they're going to, you know, going to tackle going forward?
Yeah, well, you know, it's interesting. This time that we're in has actually raised some fair housing issues. So, you know, the question has come up whether COVID-19 is a disability, and if so, you know, is there any, you know, are there any practices that realtors need to be aware of so that they don't, you know, step on the wrong side of things? Because obviously, it's, you know, potentially deadly virus, and everyone has to, you know, protect their health, and everyone needs to be able to ask questions to protect their health. But, you know, some fair housing groups have said that even though there's no case law yet, there's a potential that there are situations where judges may find COVID-19 to be a disability and where certain actions may be unreasonable and potentially violate someone's rights. Whether it's while someone actively has the virus, or whether they've recovered from the virus, or whether a person is associated with someone who has the virus and they're looking for housing, and they're denied housing because of fears. And so obviously there's reasonable boundaries, but then insofar as people go beyond that, there's a question of whether or not there are rights that we need to be concerned about. So NAR wants to put out some guidance on that. The Connecticut Real Estate Association, Connecticut Association of Realtors, did put out some guidance on it based on some of the questions they were getting. Like for example, can people use written medical questionnaires? And so there were questions about whether that was appropriate or could potentially violate people's either medical rights, or whether it violated any fair housing rights. So we delve into those issues. It's all an evolving area, but one where we need to be mindful. Also, issues of harassment and other discrimination have come up, especially against Asian Americans, and so we want to make sure no one's treating a population any differently as they seek housing because of their national origin. We think that we know better, but still it's important with every issue that comes about that we underscore our code of ethics and the laws there. So the virus is raising a host of issues, and we also see it disproportionately affecting certain populations. So there's a question of whether or not, even as we recover from it, whether there will be fair housing related issues. We're seeing even some retrenchment in credit, and that may have potential impact on certain populations. So there's a lot to monitor and evaluate, and we want to make sure realtors' interests are advanced, and that we also stay on the right side of these issues.
Wonderful. Well, Brian, thank you very much for your time. There's a lot of information I'm going to email. I already have your email, but there's some things I need to get. In my office, my local office in Philadelphia, we started a diversity committee, which was, I work for, Keller Williams, and over, I think, 900 offices in the United States. And we're the first office in Philadelphia of all of them to have a diversity committee in the office. And the feeling was that we didn't need it. And I even said, why do we have an issue? And someone was like, no, we need to be the resource for everybody else.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. So I am going to get some information from you, because you gave us a lot of things to think about and to talk about and to be able to educate people with. So thank you very much, my friend. I hope to see you, well, definitely at the Policy Summit, at least next year, but I don't know. Do you go to our event in Palm Springs?
Well, I've only been on board now 6 months, so I certainly would love to come to your event in Palm Springs. So
excellent. Thanks for your time, and stay safe, my friend.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, folks. Next up, we have my friend Ryan. Ryan, are you on yet? Are you here? Are you there? Ryan's checking in. Next up, folks, we have inclusion. The seminar, or this segment is the inclusion in the real estate industry. And we have Kathy Cummings from Bank of America, Kay Marshall, SunTrust Bank, Chrissy Johnson, Quicken Loans, Crystal Thomas from the MBA Mortgage Bankers Association, and Paul Elner from Wells Fargo Home Mortgage. And this session will be moderated by Ryan Wyatt. Are you here yet, Ryan?
Yes, sir. I certainly am.
How are you doing, my friend?
Well, things are good. It's a little gloomy today in Minneapolis, 60 degrees, but we can't complain.
Yeah, we got 62 here in Philly. And I'm glad Ryan and I had a conversation a couple days ago, and we were deciding what we were going to wear. We wanted to make sure we weren't clashing. So we did. Take it away, Ryan. It's all yours.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you all for being with us today. It's a pleasure to host this for the second consecutive year in a row. It's an important topic, inclusion in the real estate industry, and we've got some phenomenal panelists on the line today. Thank you all for making time out of your schedule to be with us. I have to apologize, as things have it, quarantining from home never works out the way you plan. The city of St. Paul actually showed up right in front of my house to start repairing potholes as we were going live. So if there's any background noise or you're having trouble hearing me, that's what you're hearing. It's a road crew working on my road in front of my house. We've got some panelists representing some of the largest and some of the most well-known institutions in the country today. And I'm just going to take a couple of minutes and I'm going to allow each panelist to go ahead and introduce themselves. If you would just give us all your name and your role and the institution that you're representing today. And I suppose we can go in the order that I'm looking at the screen. So Crystal, why don't you start us off?
Sure, it's my pleasure. And first, I just want to start off and say thank you again. I'm happy to be here and support NAGLREP for your conference. Happy to be here. So my name is Crystal Thomas. I'm a government program specialist at the NBA, specifically working on our relationships with state and local MBAs around the country and NBA's Diversity and Inclusion Initiative. So for those of you who don't know, the Mortgage Bankers Association is a trade association that represents all aspects of the industry, regardless of size, structure, and so it's a great association, and we're happy to be here to talk about some of the things that we're doing.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Paul, I'm going to throw it over to you.
Hey, hello everybody. Hi, I'm Paul Elner. I'm the market manager for South Florida down in the Miami-Dade, Broward area. Well, actually probably now half the state. We did a little bit of work realigning, but happy to be here again. I was on the panel a couple of years ago and really enjoyed sharing things that Wells Fargo was doing, and happy to have that opportunity again.
Welcome, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dear friend of mine from college, Chrissy Johnson, good to see you. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about who you're representing and what your role is?
Hi, Ryan. Thank you. Yes, happy to be here as well. My name is Chrissy Johnson. As Ryan mentioned, I'm the Vice President of Federal Policy and External Affairs at Quicken Loans and the family of companies. We are keeping very busy right now with everything happening that we're going to dive into, and so I'm happy to be here and share all of our roadblocks and opportunities that I think we can work on together.
Fantastic. Tanya, I'm going to throw it to you. Are you on the call? Can you hear us?
Yes, I am on the call. Good afternoon. First of all, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm Tanya Donaldson, Vice President, Director of Multicultural Lending for Prime Lending. And in my role, I'm responsible for overseeing all of our multicultural lending efforts nationally. And I'm very excited to be on this call today.
Well, we're excited to have you. Kay Marshall, are you with us?
Hey, Brian, how are you?
Doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. My name is Kay Marshall. I'm with SunTrust, now Truist. My role with the corporation is Mortgage Capital Markets Client Strategy Manager. I also manage the relationship or, the sponsorship with NAGLREP and NAGLREP for Truist. And thanks again for having me.
Wonderful. Our pleasure. Is there anyone that's joining us that I have missed? And with that, I take that as a no. I think, given current circumstances, current events, I think just based on some questions that we fielded earlier, I'm going to start off with you, Chrissy. What would you say are some of the roadblocks that have emerged from the housing industry as a result of the COVID-19 crisis and the need to shelter in place? And then what do you think some possible solutions to those roadblocks look like long term?
Sure. Well, obviously, we're going through an unprecedented crisis right now, and there are some very serious issues that we're having to take up to address just unexpected roadblocks to the whole mortgage process and the housing, getting people in their homes, that process. But as we like to talk about it internally, as we're navigating all of these challenges, we also like to look for what we call silver linings. So how can we use this time as a catalyst for change, for the better, to continue to improve? So here at Quicken, we like to say that we are a technology company that happens to also be in the mortgage business. So in that vein, we have always strongly supported any efforts that move the mortgage processes away from the more time-consuming and inefficient paper-centric processes toward the more consumer-friendly digital ones. This is part of what we call the speed of the game at Quicken. loans. So keeping up with the speed of the game, as our founder, Dan Gilbert, likes to remind us. A great example that I think is relevant to the NAGLREP community is with closings. So we're seeing a lot more states allow remote online notarization, also called Ron, our favorite ex-boyfriend Ron. Ron always Ron currently allows the use of the audio and visual technology to take the place of needing an in-person meeting with a notary. So there are some hoops that we have to go through, like Wi-Fi speeds and other things, making sure that you have the proper security and camera in place. But ultimately, it really allows the consumer and the notary to finish this transaction from the safety and comfort of their own home, which is extremely critical during this time. That's been at a state-by-state level. Currently on the federal level, there's been some bipartisan legislation introduced that MBA has also been working with us on, called the Secure Notarization Act. And that would make our friend Ron the law of the entire land, so the federal law. In addition to that, I do see digital improvements like this, like Ron, staying long term, because like I said, this is a moment for a catalyst for change for the better. And we expect to see more government agencies, policies that embrace technology moving forward, such as appraisal waivers, things like that. All these things that still people allowing them to do their jobs from home, using data, using a digital process, while also allowing consumers to close on their homes, refinance, all of those opportunities that we really need in this time. Another issue that we're working on and seeing more traction on is e-signing for loan modifications. That's the ability to move away from needing a wet signature on a piece of paper, and it's critical for folks who are in forbearance and also may need those loan modifications after, which I'm sure we'll get into forbearance today because it is a hot topic right now.
It is, isn't that the truth? Thank you for the answer. And actually, Crystal, I'm going to throw it up to you. That kind of, what Chris was saying kind of expands on a larger point. And that is the need for diversity and inclusion in a COVID-19 environment. Can you address just a little bit on an industry level what that might look like going forward?
Yes, thank you so much for the question. It is definitely one of the top things that we are considering in addition to all of the other things that are happening. I mean, just to give a couple of examples, we now have companies that are transitioning workforce in this telework space, and so trying to adapt to, you know, the same place that you work and sleep. Like it's a lot to process. We now have employees that are, you know, teaching their children. And understanding that this impacts everybody differently depending on different abilities, different backgrounds, and things like that. And so as an industry, we were already making progress to be more inclusive, not only in how we do business and connect with others, but also internally. So recruiting and retaining talent, reaching across different generations and different backgrounds. And so now in this COVID-19 space, where we are, you know, isolated physically, but hopefully not socially, we've been leveraging a lot more of providing digital content, creating opportunities where we can just check in on not only our employees, but also members to kind of see as they're adapting to this telework environment, how we can be a resource and a help to them. And an example of that is we are doing a webinar talking about adapting to the new normal and how when you're thinking about coming up with processes and solutions from an inclusive standpoint, how that can really truly lead to a lot of success, not only in how you do business, but the success internally of your company.
Isn't that the truth? Thank you. We appreciate the insight there. That, you know, speaking of changes, Kay, I'm going to throw it over to you. Kay Marshall, SunTrust Bank is going through a change itself. Would you just do me a favor and tell me what the new name is? How do you pronounce the new name?
So the new name is pronounced Truist. We here at SunTrust call it, well, probably the most expensive I placed in trust ever in the history of an I. So yeah, that is, the pronunciation. Again, we became the legal entity in December. So obviously now, you know, working on that integration of systems and those types of things, your employee teammate networks, those, you know, trying to merge those. They actually renamed those to business resource groups, which is probably more fitting. Going through, you know, all of the technology, as you can imagine, from, you know, two corporations, BB&T and SunTrust merging, and then you get COVID-19, which basically sends you into probably, you know, what most other, you know, lenders have experienced in trying to get the technology for your workforce to, you know, go to an alternative work strategy, working remote. So that, you know, has slowed that integration down, but it's my understanding that, you know, those things are kicking back up now. So I definitely think that this is going to be a catalyst for change for working environments, as the BB&T, the Heritage BB&T Corporation, was not a big fan from folks working remotely, and I think, you know, this may certainly change that. I unfortunately could not join you today on Zoom because I am still in the office, and they've shut Zoom down for us to be able to have access to it for security reasons. But I run also the secondary lock desk, and we have to have people on site as well as remote, as you can imagine, as we're managing rate locks.
Absolutely. Well, we definitely appreciate you being with us via phone. Kay, would you say that, I know in our past dialogues, SunTrust has shown just an extraordinary commitment to diversity and inclusion. The expectation is for that to either hold strong or improve. Is that accurate?
Oh, absolutely, yes. We definitely hope that with the combination of the organizations and, you know, becoming as large as we are, that there is a tremendous amount of focus on, you know, inclusion and diversity. You know, they developed a diversity recruiting page to help foster inclusion more, from hiring people with different backgrounds. You know, obviously you want to build, you know, your teams and mirror your client base. There's many initiatives to strive to, you know, create the synergy of the diversities. Again, you know, we went into building strategic partnerships with colleges and professional associations to attract and retain, you know, talent, creating an atmosphere of respect and inclusion, with a zero policy for harassment and discrimination. Again, you know, there's a team that's dedicated to nurturing a rich and diverse workforce, proactive supplier opportunities for minorities, women, LGBT and disabled owned businesses. So yeah, there's a tremendous amount of focus. There was, with the merger, a community benefit plan that was put into action. And I think we probably have like over, I know it's over 100 folks that, you know, that have anything to do with, you know, this community, connecting, you know, with those organizations in the Truist footprint. So it looks, you know, to be like, you know, there's going to be a tremendous opportunity here for us to, you know, grow even further in that area.
Phenomenal. That's exciting to hear. I know anytime you go through a major brand change like that or merger, there's always some question as to will those policies extend into the future. So it's comforting to hear that that the commitment will remain the same, if not increase, it sounds like. Paul, I'm going to throw it over to you, and this is kind of a personal question. But being part of the LGBT segment yourself, would you care to talk about a little bit how your leadership growth has either been enhanced or stifled throughout the years?
So I've got kind of an interesting background to this question. I'll first start with my time with Wells Fargo has really accelerated, I think, my growth around the diversity and inclusion leadership arena, and allowed me to really sort of spread my wings. I will tell you, before I came here, I worked for companies that did a lot of talking about diversity and inclusion, had a lot of sort of policies, had what, you know, on paper looked like would be things that would, you know, foster that. But it just didn't happen that way. You really didn't get the backing of the organization. You really didn't have the resources to move forward. And there wasn't really any singular focus on somebody's development in that arena. For an LGBT person, for instance, there wasn't any education around the environment that I was working in. There wasn't any education around even just the lending environment and what LGBT experiences were going through. Coming over to Wells Fargo, I'll just tell you a quick little story that I knew this was the right place to come. I remember when I did my interview, we had this panel interview, and it was about 8 people I was interviewing in front of. And I had just left an organization that I had come out recently, so it'd been a few years, but I had come out. And when I came out, suddenly my career went south. And so the organization, although they talked about how great inclusion was, I clearly wasn't experiencing that. And when I came out, next thing you know, I was sort of out the door, if you will. So I just made a decision that no matter where I ended up working, I was going to be very open, very honest about who I am and what was important to me. So I went to this panel interview with Wells Fargo, and quite candidly, on my own, I had recently met somebody. We moved in together, and so I just, at that point, somehow I introduced this person into the conversation somehow. I don't even remember exactly how. But the intent for me was, if this business is really going to support diversity and inclusion, I don't want to find out when I get there that they don't. I want to find out now if they will. So I just slipped in something about my partner and I kind of did the eye check to see how it kind of went over. And I'm telling you, I got a bunch of questions back that were sort of supportive questions like, oh, tell me about your partner a little bit, or, how did you guys meet? Is your partner going to move with you? What does he think about Wells Fargo? I mean, just the questions that, I left that panel interview just sort of pumped up, thinking I think I found my home. And I did. And since being with Wells Fargo, I've had an incredible amount of opportunity to be part of a lot of diversity and inclusion opportunities like this, for instance. I certainly have done a lot of speaking engagements for local groups. I'm a member of our TeamWorks, in diversity and inclusion for the LGBT community. In fact, I'm on the board. I have a role around the communications piece of it. So yeah, I've really experienced quite a change in my ability to learn and grow within Wells Fargo. So it was a fantastic move, and I have the perspective of being somewhere else where a lot of organizations say a lot of stuff and don't deliver it all. So it's nice to see the opposite of that here.
Wonderful. That's good to hear. And I mean, truth be told, I spent quite a few years with Wells Fargo, and I had a very comparable experience as well. My time spent now with US Bank has been refreshingly similar, in fact. So it's nice to know that such large institutions really do value that diversity in their employees.
Yeah.
And really encourage you to bring that to the table in your daily perspective. On the other side of that, LaTanya, you have a very integral role in creating D&I policy for the company. What do you think the 3 main components of having a successful D&I program would look like for an organization?
Well, Ryan, thank you for that question. I think it's quite simple for me. When you look at having a successful program, it's very important, first of all, to have executive involvement. You have to have the support from the top. When I first came over to Carnegie around 7 years ago, as they were hiring me, I remember sitting there that day in the interview with our CEO at the time, and I looked him in the eyes and I asked him, are you involved? Will you take personal responsibility in this? And he gave me that guarantee. And I think that especially when we're in these roles, I've been in the mortgage industry for like over 20 years now, and specifically in diversity and inclusion space now, going on 10 years, you have to have the support of leadership. Because if you don't, then it's looked upon as this something you're doing over on the side. So that's one of the first components. And then the partnerships that we have with NAGLREP and some of the other trade organizations. You have to be willing and be humbled as an organization to allow partners to come in and form partnerships where you can rely on them to bring knowledge and, you know, to kind of challenge you where you are and take kind of an honest look at where you are as a company. And then also make sure that when you're planning your D&I initiative, that they align with your company's strategic plan. So I think with those three components, that's the start of creating a very robust diversity and inclusion program.
Yeah, wonderful. I totally agree. Kay, I wonder, could you tell us a little bit about Truist specifically? What have they done corporately on the journey for inclusion?
So we received the 2020 Human Rights Campaign 100% Corporate Equality Index as a designation, best place to work for both of our heritage companies. So that was, you know, something that was good. For the Heritage SunTrust organization, we've scored over 100 the last 12 years. Recognized as best of the best corporation for inclusion with NGLCC, and that was Heritage SunTrust as well. And again, we've engaged teammates and clients and community partners via the PRIDE, which is the LGBTQ plus business resource group. We've got 23 active chapters across the Truist regions and more than 50 teammates leading those business resource groups. So you can tell that there's a tremendous amount of support, you know, within the team for these organizations. And I just want to echo, what Tanya said previously, that it is definitely has to come from the top down in leadership, or it, I think you probably then lend back to, Paul's experience that he had previous to Wells Fargo. And fortunately, the gentleman who was the CEO of SunTrust, he's next in line for when the current CEO retires next year, is such a firm believer in purpose and, leading purpose and change and teammates and clients. So I think a lot of that stems, from his direction. He's always been a tremendous supporter of being in the communities and what you can do, in diversity and inclusion, to the point of hiring a dedicated team to be solely focused on that. So, I look forward to seeing how everything goes and, into growing this tremendous opportunity.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And Paul, kind of a follow-up to that then, obviously with the LGBT segment holding a tremendous amount of power as far as wealth creation and potential home purchase opportunity, what does Wells Fargo do? How does Wells Fargo gain insight into the needs and perspective about this segment?
Yeah, so most of the networking that we pick up and learn about is really through our team member support networks, which we established in 1992. And that really has elevated the opportunity for the business to learn about what's important to that segment. We have many segments throughout the U.S. I know, like I said, I sit on the board of the one down in South Florida, where we share experiences from realtor groups, home buying networks, things of that nature that help us learn about what's important in the community and what we think we need to bring to the table for the business to learn a little bit more. On top of that, we also have a leadership development program for high potential LGBT team members. So there's an opportunity for them also to learn and educate and sort of develop their careers. So, I think Wells has done a really solid job trying to learn about the community. It takes leaders like me and others, obviously, to educate. Clearly, being part of a national organization and working with NAGLREP also helps us learn about what we need to be more in tune with as well as a business, and make sure that we shape our policies around that in the home buying experience for our community as well. So I think those 3 tranches really help us have a holistic approach.
Wonderful. Appreciate that. Just so you folks know, we are coming to the bottom of the time that we have together. I would like to get 2 more questions in, so if we could focus on brevity, I would appreciate that, just so we can hit these last 2 questions. Chrissy, what do you think the opportunity for NAGLREP is to get involved in the LGBT communities to make sure that the voices are heard as we continue to look at Congress debate the response to the coronavirus?
Sure. Well, speaking of silver linings, I think if we're going to go through international pandemic, thank God we're doing it during a time of where technology is available to us. And I think that's incredibly relevant right now. I know we recently, in early May, we moved 98% of our workforce to work from home, and did it seamlessly thanks to amazing technology. And so I know that we miss gathering all together, as we always have in our nation's capital with NAGLREP, to discuss all these important and advocate on behalf of these critical issues on housing and human rights issues pertaining to the LGBTQ community. However, given the circumstances, and if this is the first time that the annual policy summit is held virtually, it should not deter folks from reaching out to their representatives virtually using technology. So all NAGLREP members should continue their critical advocacy. We need those voices out there, and these are the issues that matter the most. So as we look forward and Congress is thinking about CARES Act 2.0 or Phase 4 or whatever they're calling it these days, it changes every day. NAGLREP members should be hitting the phones, scheduling Zoom meetings with Senate and House staff and members, and pushing again for those policies that make a difference in the communities. So those are issues around forbearance or deferral. Both of those issues are going to be coming up hot, and they're 2 very different things, and people are confused by them, including the policymakers. How we're supporting the lenders in this environment with liquidity issues, how we're making sure that important consumer protections are in place for these temporary solutions to the problem. The Congress members who Congress who serve these on the committee, such as House Financial Services and Senate Banking, Housing and Urban Affairs, are going to be the highest relevance, have the highest relevance for these issues, and should be considered as priority members to touch in their outreach.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of information in there. It's obviously a passion point of yours. That might be a good opportunity for us to sidebar and do a live segment on that all by itself at some point in time in the future. Crystal, I'm going to let you end the whole segment for us. Say I'm new to the industry. What is the first step to getting involved as far as inclusion? How do I feel included in the industry? And bearing in mind that we're at the end of the session, I'm going to let you finish it.
Wonderful, and I'll keep it short and sweet. So I myself, as an example, kind of falling into this industry, there's a lot of misconceptions about what the real estate finance industry is as a whole. And so coming in, not really knowing what to expect was a bit of a shock. And what has been the most rewarding about this industry is there are a lot of people who are very passionate about what they do, that are very focused on the consumers that they serve and the work that they produce. And so where I was able to kind of find my own space and leverage my own talents were through a variety of different partnerships. So we talked about those partnerships, leveraging the partnerships with NAGLREP and other organizations that are creating those inclusive spaces. The fact that you guys are still holding your summit during, at this time and not changing it, it's so substantial and so important. I will also say education. So with MBA, we do similar to what all the other panelists have mentioned when they're talking about inclusion. We've incorporated scholarships for people with diverse backgrounds, regardless of sexual orientation, identity, gender identity, all of that. They're able to apply and receive grant funding so they can come and further their career development within the real estate finance industry. And also we did talk about the importance of creating that space. So where you're able to actually get the input of those about what they want, the communities that we serve, getting their feedback and finding out what it is that they want to help us be better at the business that we produce. So we have tons of online resources, not only for our companies, but also platforms for practitioners to share what's working within their company and leveraging that. And then lastly, I know I can talk about this all day, so I'll keep it short. I'm sorry, guys. But also, like we're talking about, making sure that it comes from the top down. So, I'm very thankful at MBA that we have leadership that's very dedicated, not only in making sure that we're recognizing our member companies, shout out to SunTrust, who won our leadership award this year, but highlighting the work that they're doing within their companies, but making sure that we're practicing what we preach. And so our leadership empowered us to create our own internal diversity and inclusion program, where we're having these conversations about what does it mean to be LGBTQ plus in real estate finance? What does it mean to be a person of color working in this industry? And how do we bring all of our full selves, our authentic selves into work to ultimately make business better for everyone?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you all for your time today. Thank you, Jeff Berger, for making this possible as we're all coming remote. And with that, I'm going to throw it back over to Jack Barry.
Ryan, thank you very much. Thank you to everybody now it is this afternoon in Philadelphia anyway, for the morning for most of you. Thanks for joining us, and everybody stay safe out there. Next up, we have Kimber White, who is the chair, and then Valerie Saunders, co-chair of the Mortgage Advisory Group, which is relatively new to NAGLREP, and they're going to talk about where we're at and where we're going. Are we on, Kimber and Valerie? Are you here? Are you there?
We are here.
Take it away. It's all on you. Is Valerie here?
I'm here.
Oh, Kimber.
Kimber?
There you go.
So my name is Valerie Saunders. I am the executive director for the National Association of Mortgage Brokers, and I am co-chair for the Mortgage Advisory Group with Kimber White, who is NAMB's president-elect. Kimber, are you able to hear me? I think he's having some audio issues, so I'll go ahead and keep talking here. So we're very excited to be part of the inaugural advisory committee with NAGLREP in relation to mortgage issues. What I thought we would do is we had our very first meeting yesterday and just kind of go over the items that we discussed as part of that meeting and sort of, what the goals are of our group and what we intend to work on. And then I figured that we would finish it up a little bit with a couple initiatives that our organization is working on that we wanted to share with this organization. So we had a great group of people that met with us yesterday. And basically what we talked about is looking to create resources and educational opportunities for NAGLREP and the real estate and mortgage professionals that are part of the group. So we are going to have a focus on, as I said, resources. So we're going to create a page that contains consumer-focused resources, but also mortgage-related resources that will be of use for real estate professionals. So things regarding something that first-time home buyers might need to know. For example, Freddie Mac has a program called Credit Smart that people are able to utilize for first-time home buyer sessions, educational sessions for people in their communities. So it's available for mortgage professionals or real estate professionals to utilize. It's a 12-module session, and it has all of the materials, PowerPoint presentations, guides that can be provided to first-time home buyers so you can do your own first-time home buyer seminars. Credit issues, just what you need to do to prepare to purchase a home, things like that. So we're going to have that available for consumers. On the mortgage professional side, we're going to have a variety of resources that we who happen to be in the mortgage industry are aware of, but want to share with other real estate and mortgage professionals, whether it's from Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae or FHA, VA, USDA, any of those bulletins or information that the group would find of interest to utilize in your day-to-day business. So that's going to be part of our sort of mortgage advisory committee resource page. We're also going to work on creating some educational opportunities for the group in the form of webinars. And I know that NAGLREP has a webinar next week with Freddie Mac. We're going to continue to expand on that with Freddie Mac webinars, but also additional webinars from other groups or industries that would provide mortgage-related content and information to NAGLREP's members so that you would be able to utilize that in your day-to-day business. So that's kind of the goal and the initiatives of where the Mortgage Advisory Committee sees themselves going into the future. We're also going to be sending or requesting that a survey be sent out, to NAGLREP's members, so that if there are some resources, tools, information that you would like for us to be working on or to provide to you, we're able to do that. So we will be providing that information over to Jeff shortly. And we hope that once everyone gets the link to access the survey that you'll respond. So Kimber, are you with us now?
I am on, finally.
That's great. So I kind of just went over our meeting yesterday and some of the goals and initiatives that we worked on. I didn't know if you wanted to make a few comments.
Yeah, I think that the advisory panel is going to be something that's going to help our industry. We'll be able to offer the tools, have the tools for that. We'll be able to be involved with legislation, growing our share, and making sure that we're represented on both sides for anything that we do with NAGLREP. And I think this is something that's really going to help the mortgage loan originator and those realtors and everyone in our industry.
Great. So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Did you mention our legislation that we have that NAM's got going and things like that?
Just getting ready to start working on that. All I did was discuss the what the committee discussed yesterday and sort of our goals and initiatives that we'll be working on that we discussed. So just getting now to what NAM's working on. So if you want to start that, feel free.
Yeah, one of the things that NAM has gone with, one of the initiatives that they're doing, which is going to affect all of us in legislative issue, is a trigger leads bill, which is something that's very important for all of us. When you have a client and whether you're a realtor or a mortgage professional and you are referring a client out, then what ends up happening is that these leads are sold, your name is sold, things are sold. So now all of a sudden it's confusing, and the people you may have referred out to or the client is now being solicited by people that they did not even give their information to. So their credit, their information, everything sold to someone who's soliciting them, which can be very confusing. So we are supporting a bill by Lacey Clay that will ban trigger leads. You want to expand on that, Valerie?
Sure. So so obviously, Kimber and I are very connected with the National Association of Mortgage Brokers. So we're going to be referring to some of these things that we have available on our Legislative Action Center, which are accessible to the public. So any of the NAGLREP members or any realtors or other mortgage professionals are able to access the information. And you do that by going to our website, which is namb.org, highlighting resources, clicking on you'll go to Legislative Advocacy, and then the very top item is the Action Center. So these things that we're referring to are on that page. So we do have a couple of calls to action. Kimber mentioned the one. It's in support of HR 5720, which is the Trigger Leads Prohibition Act. And as Kimber mentioned, this was recently introduced by Congressman Lacey Clay, who is the chairman of the Committee on Financial Services. And its purpose is to basically ban trigger leads. And so you may have had where one of your buyers or a borrower entered into a transaction or initiated a transaction with one particular lender or bank or mortgage professional. And within sometimes hours, they started receiving telephone calls and emails from other lenders who are looking to provide them with financing. And so that is when your lead or inquiry into that buyer or borrower's credit immediately initiates a trigger to the credit reporting agencies that are sold to a variety of lenders or banks, and that is their notification that, hey, this person is looking for financing to potentially purchase a home or refinance their existing home. And so what this does is it prohibits these institutions from being able to sell these consumers' data to companies that have no relationship or transactional connection to the consumer.
Yeah. And there's, our time is short, but there are other bills that we're working on that is going to be affecting our industry definitely during this time where we have. Real quickly, I know we're on a short time. We've just supporting of the CARES Act, which Valerie give probably a 30-minute synopsis on the CARES Act for us, because that's very important industry right now. A 30-second to me.
Well, so the other one that we're working on is the issue with servicer liquidity in relation to the CARES Act. That's another call to action that we have where non-bank lenders are charged 500 to 700 basis points for doing first-time homebuyer transactions or cash-out transactions. So that is the other talking point that's on that Legislative Action Center page that's very important to the industry because it can hamper the flow of monies to purchasers.
Yeah, so all these things are available. They are on NAM's page, but also this is something that flows down legislative to everyone with a NAGLREP. It flows down to the mortgage industry. It flows down to the housing industry with the realtors. And this is what we're here for. This is what the Mortgage Advisory Committee is put together for, we want to make sure that we have every industry involved so that we can have the best for our members and for the consumers. So this is the things that we will be working on. This is with other agencies, other industries that will make sure that we have the best tools and knowledge available for you in the coming future. All right. Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Apologize for the glitch today, Alani.
Thank you very much for joining us in our new reality, doing seminars and summits by Zoom. I hope this is going very well, but I hope it's the last one we do. I can't wait to see everybody in person again. So thank you very much for your time, and hope you stay safe where you're at, please.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, folks, next up is our keynote, and that is Congressman Alan Lowenthal from California. And the congressman is the chair of the LGBT caucus in Congress, which is the largest caucus currently. And the congressman, for a lot of all the good things he does and has done, is known for being the very first congressman to fly the pride flag outside his congressional office in Congress. Congressman, are you here? Are you there?
Hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. First, before I begin, I'd like to ask you, first of all, you can see me. Yeah. How do you pronounce? I know it's the National Association of Gay and Lesbian Real Estate Professionals, but what's the shortened? Do you call it NAG? I can't pronounce it, or I'm incorrectly.
NAGLREP is how people say it.
NAGLREP? Well,
NAGLREP, yeah.
NAGLREP. It's a pleasure to be here before NAGLREP. Shall I begin?
Yes, sir.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here during this unusual time, this crisis time. Hopefully we will come out of this stronger and healthier as a nation, but it's very, very difficult. I know our economy is in serious pain, but so is this. You know, it's so important to be able to stop this virus at this moment and to engage in activities that really protect us. And so I'm talking to you from my home, I'm not quite sure when I'm coming back to Congress. I thought we were going to be coming back next week, but it's been decided no, to delay that, the leadership, and to wait. The attending physician thought it might not be safe for us to be all coming back to Washington. So again, I'm Congressman Alan Lowenthal. I represent the 47th Congressional District. It's a very interesting district. It's a district that was created by the California Independent Redistricting Commission, which I helped to work on and write when I was in the state legislature. And that tries to make fairer districts by taking the drawing of districts out of the hands of elected officials and giving it to an independent body. So this district is a little bit more than half in Long Beach and southeastern LA County. And the other 45% of the district is western and northern Orange County. Quite different populations, but it's a very diverse county, a very diverse district, ethnically very diverse, and I'm proud to say among my constituents is one of the most vibrant and largest LGBT communities in the nation. So it's a wonderful, wonderful district. I know we're here today to talk about home ownership, what it means to the LGBT community. But before I do that, you've already mentioned one thing about me. I want to talk a little bit about my past. I've been doing this for a long time. I just realized now that I'm home and thinking about it. I was a college professor. I came to California and began to teach really in the early 1970s. Out of graduate school, I became very active in my community. California, it's good, and my district in Long Beach was going through in the 1970s and 1980s a tremendous transition from a kind of Iowa by the sea mentality, mostly white, to a very ethnically diverse, also diverse in terms of sexual orientation, large rise in the LGBTQ community, and just becoming a world-class international city, Long Beach was, and evolving from one that had been, had its roots really in the Depression and people coming from the Midwest in the 1930s. And now it was going through another great change in terms of its makeup. I was a community psychologist, so I was interested in the well-being, teaching at Cal State Long Beach, the well-being of my community. So I spent a lot of time getting involved, both in terms of grassroots efforts in my community, finding out what were the kind of social programs, working with them, being involved in them, but also in terms of the changes that were going on in my community. And I became involved in a group called, in the 1980s, the Long Beach Area Citizens Involved, which was an umbrella group of all those who felt that they weren't being heard in the community. That was the African-American community, Latino community, LGBTQ community. And as the decade continued and we went through those kinds of crisis, whether it was the AIDS crisis, where many of my friends who were on the board and worked with me as I became leader in political activities and trying to move the city of Long Beach to become a more open to diversity. I lost many of my dear friends in that AIDS epidemic. I also became, because I was an educator, very much involved in the 1980s. In the first attempt, I became very much aware that there was homelessness among our LGBT youth. And there was really very little kind of opportunities for kids to express themselves and feel safe in the school. So I became very much involved in educational programs. This was way before any of your time, but became involved with a program called Project 10, which was the first LGBTQ safe place for students. It was first started in Los Angeles. I then joined the Long Beach Human Rights Commission to fight for greater equality, and my first efforts were really there working on educational opportunities for LGBTQ students. And that was in the 80s, and we moved into the 90s. As a community activist, I ran for city council in 1992 in Long Beach. Actually, the only group that supported me was Lambda. The Lambda Democratic Club was the only group that supported me. I ran on a kind of on a housing issues, fighting for more affordable housing. Lo and behold, I won that election, unseated a 17-year incumbent, and in those days, in the early 1990s, introduced the legislation for domestic partnership, and try to be the spokesperson for those in my community. And my community was a community that really housed, it was of the 9 city council districts, my district was really the home of the LGBT community along the southeastern part of the city of Long Beach. As I moved on, I was fortunate enough in 1998 to be elected to the State Assembly and to the State Senate, where I continued to fight for human rights and human rights issues. And then in 2012 was elected to the House of Representatives, representing Long Beach and, as I mentioned, Northern and Western Orange County. I became very, even there, became very, as I joined, became very much involved in human rights issues, became a member of the Equality Caucus right away, and became a vice chair of the Equality Caucus. And what is interesting, because you mentioned about the flag, in 2013, which was the first actual year that I was in the Congress, I would go over to the Supreme Courts trying to hear the oral arguments and listen to them and trying to get in. It was very difficult to get tickets to get into the Supreme Court during the hearing. It was the time when the Supreme Court was discussing the DOMA and also the horrible Proposition 8 in California, which was the, as you remember, the anti same-sex marriage. That was before the Supreme Court. I was appalled by some of the discriminatory and the arguments which supported Prop 8 and which were in favor of DOMA. And so I said, you know, out of solidarity, I'm going to fly this flag. I'm going to have the flag outside my office, because if the LGBT community is not free and independent, I'm not free and independent. And I want everybody to who comes to my office to understand that this is critically important. You're entering an office that really supports human rights and supports the rights of people to be themselves and to express themselves and to express their love for others. And I'm going to fly that flag. And over the years, it's been very interesting. It's kind of evolved. There's always been people, when they would come, I was on the first floor of the Cannon office building, and as you know, there are 3 office buildings for the house. And so a lot of people, and my office was kind of like right near the entrance as you come into Cannon. So almost off the metro station. So almost everybody that would come into the office, into the building, would pass by my office. Many people were very positive about the flag. They would stop, they would have their picture taken, they would frequently come into the office and thank me for it. And so not only was I the first office, but I also had some very interesting experiences besides the support. In 2015, one of the visitors to our building pulled the flag down. As you know, when you come into any congressional office, outside in the halls, there are 3 flag poles as you're facing the office. On the left side is always the U.S. flag, and across on the right side is the flag of your state, which is obviously my state was California. And next to that, members are allowed to choose another flag that they want to express, you know, their feelings about what they'd like to do. Most members at that time had MIA flags for the missing in action, people who had served our country who never came back, and we never knew what happened to them. I flew the pride flag at that time. So in 2015, someone came into the building, he walked past my office, was so taken back, grabbed the flag, threw it on the ground, stomped on it, came into my office, berated my staff. Thankfully, the flag was not damaged, but we detained the flag, brought the person to the Capitol Police, to the embarrassment of his family, as the Capitol Police detained him. But we were not going to stand for that. Another issue that came up that was very interesting was 2 years later, after the change, after the President Obama had been left office in 2016, I think it was early in 2017, a man came by and said he was offended by the flag and sued me for the flag. He told me to take it down. Fortunately, the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia dismissed the case as frivolous and without merit. In both of those examples, there was a tremendous outpouring of support from the LGBTQ community, as well as the public at large, as well as members of Congress. And many members began to fly outside their office the pride flag, which I thought was a wonderful display of solidarity for that. And we've come a long, long way to supporting the LGBT community. And I've seen now over 40 years of working on LGBTQ issues. Did I lose you? But I'm going to continue. And more importantly, we've raising awareness of some of the critical issues. You know, we know that we're going through this crisis, and we know that there are certain populations that are disproportionately impacted by the coronavirus. They're the communities that have been historically marginalized. Many in the LGBT community, like the African American community, like the Latino community in my district, are more vulnerable because they work in jobs that are highly affected industries, more exposure. As Congress moves to provide further assistance, I think one of the things that we've become more and more aware of, this virus does not attack people equally. It attacks those that are economically the most vulnerable and who live in the worst kinds, or the most compact, maybe not the worst, the tightest compacted communities. They're the ones that have been the most affected. So it becomes critically important that Congress, as we move forward, begins to focus more on those communities like the LGBT community, African American community, and others that really need to have more targeted resources for them. Another issue that we really need to have, and it's so important out here in California, is the 2020 census, and I want to bring that issue up also. You know, the LGBTQ community has fought for many years to be recognized, to be counted. Like other marginalized communities, it's been historically undercounted, underrepresented in terms of legislature, in terms of business, and it's imperative, though, that when we have a census, that everybody, and especially everybody in the LGBTQ community, participates. The census will not only set governmental representation levels, but it's also going to define the funding, federal funding levels that are so, and we're seeing right now with the coronavirus, are so desperately needed, especially in historically marginalized communities. Another thing that's so critically important that I'd really like to stress before I get to the Equality Act and housing is the election coming up. Being loud and proud doesn't just mean advocacy. It means making your voice heard at the ballot box. And though the ballot and through the ballot box, making sure that you support policies that are supportive of the community. The presidential election is not only the thing that's, although it's critically important, but it's not the only thing that matters. It also matters electing people at the local level. And in Long Beach, you know, I see that. As I mentioned when I first started, when I became involved in Long Beach, it was a fairly white community that had come here, many of them since the 1930s and 40s, and right after the war, 50s and 60s, but it has now evolved into a very diverse community. But it's really important, and it is demonstrated that when you elect people that really represent the community and fight for the community, great changes can occur. And I live in a very fortunate in Long Beach in a community that has really done that, has really embraced its diversity and embraced all. Which brings me to the issue of housing and the Equality Act legislation. You know, despite the Fair Housing Act, which was passed 50 years ago, every person who's watching this or in the room now knows that housing discrimination still goes on. In many cases, it goes on legally because sexual orientation was never identified as a protected category. This will come to no surprise to you, your organization, or any of your members who work so hard and tirelessly to add LGBTQ inclusion into the Fair Housing Act. And I applaud your work on this issue. And thank you for the years of encouragement that you've provided, not just to me, but also to all of my colleagues who are members of the House of Representatives Equality Caucus. Your work on this issue has taught you the statistics, and you know the statistics more than we do here in Congress, that 65% of Americans own a home, but in the LGBT community, only less than 50% have home ownership. Surveys have indicated that the main obstacles to LGBTQ home ownership mirrors those of the general population. Putting together a down payment, the ability to afford a monthly mortgage, credit issues, or just the high cost of living where they live really impacts the LGBT community, but that doesn't fully account for this disparity. A study in 2019 by Iowa State found that same-sex couples were 73% more likely to be denied a home loan. Let me say that again, 73% more likely to be denied a home loan. Those that were approved faced higher interest, higher fees, all this despite no evidence, and I say that, no evidence to suggest that same-sex couples had a higher default rate. In fact, the Iowa study had found evidence to suggest just the opposite, that same-sex borrowers outperformed traditional borrowers. Last year, a study by Fannie Mae found that 46% of potential LGBTQ homeowners feared discrimination in the home buying process. That discrimination, like that, fearing discrimination, can exist anywhere, not just in Iowa, as I mentioned, but throughout the nation. And it's intolerable. That's why we have to make the Equality Act the law of the land. If we hold true to the idea that America stands for equality and diversity, then equal rights must apply and be protected for all Americans. Up until the Equality Act, the gains were incremental gains for the LGBTQ community. That is, we fought for in employment or in housing or in education. Each one of those were fights about existing discrimination in those issues. But it really became very, very much, and that's what apparent, and that's what led to the Equality Act, that we really had to, as a Congress, amend the Civil Rights Act to prohibit discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity in everything, to provide the LGBTQ, the community, the same rights that everyone else had. They don't have to fight in every single area, but they're protected in all: employment, housing, public accommodation, public education, federal funding, credit, jury service. So where are we? Last year, we, under the great leadership of David Cicilline from Rhode Island, who is our leader on the Equality Act, we were able in the House of Representatives to pass the Equality Act. Sadly, it now sits in the Senate, which is Republican controlled, and I don't say that in a pejorative sense, but just in the sense of that's really where it is right now under Mr. McConnell, and he has not even addressed it and will not take it up before this session of Congress is over. But mark my words, it will be taken up, if not this year, hopefully this year, the next year, and it will pass. The Congress will pass the Equality Act, and it will be hopefully in this session, but if not this session, by the next session of Congress, passed and signed by the president. And so we're all going to keep fighting. We know fighting for equality is really what we're elected to do, and it's on the right side of history, and we're going to win out. But I want to also talk about one other issue that's very, very important. I mentioned at the beginning how I became very much interested in many of my early issues when I was a college professor in the 1980s had to do with the lack of safety and resources for LGBTQ students in schools. And I learned at that time, as I began to work on those issues, that a critical issue was so many of our LGBTQ youth were homeless. Like in Long Beach, we have a vibrant community, but it's not affordable really any longer. And affordability of housing is a major obstacle. And on top of that, when you add in discrimination, or in terms of finding any kind of housing, we realize that we have a huge problem among homelessness, and much of that homelessness is not a choice that people want to do, but that they're trying to leave an intolerable situation, whether a family situation or others, that is non-accepting. One of the routes to getting out is to be on the streets. So we know that the LGBT community especially youth, are definitely higher at risk for homelessness. And there's not enough being done to protect these, to getting these folks off the streets into stable housing, and that's unacceptable. Last year, I joined with my colleagues in sending a letter to the Secretary of Health and Human Services opposing their proposal to remove regulations on prohibiting discrimination in Health and Human Service funded programs based on sexual orientation, gender identity, and sex. So we're finding that we're, in many parts of the administration, that we're backsliding instead of moving forward. Not only are we not passing the Equality Act, we're seeing that regulations that are there in place to protect us are being weakened. So I'd just like to conclude by saying that it's been a wonderful experience living now more than 50 years in Long Beach. I'm proud to see the LGBT community grow into a powerful, thriving, key part of every aspect. We have a wonderful gay mayor, Mayor Garcia, who's really maybe one of the most popular mayors the city has ever seen. I just want to thank you, and I know that history is on our side. The moral arc of the universe, as Martin Luther King Jr. has said, bends towards justice. We will pass the Equality Act and bend towards justice. Thank you.
Congressman, thank you so much. Just absolutely compelling. And we thank you for your advocacy and your support, but mostly for being, from what I consider, just real. You seem like a real person, and I think a lot of the disparity that we have with elected officials is people are afraid of them and afraid to talk to them, and you seem very real to us. So thank you very much. We appreciate your time, and we'll see you back in Washington, D.C. We hope soon.
I hope so too. Very soon to be back in Washington to see you. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Bye now.
Okay, folks, we're coming to the end zone here. We're at our last session, and this is being hosted by John Graff, who is a policy advisor for the National Association of Gay, Lesbian, Real Estate Professionals, and he's going to talk to Sean Gaylord, who is the executive director of the Congressional Equality, LGBT and Equality Caucus. John, are you here? Are you there? Sean, are you there? I see John, and I see Sean.
Hello.
I got Sean. How are you, Sean?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Are you in DC?
I am. Yeah.
We see John. We don't hear him. No? You want to dial in, John? Oh, you there? No.
Try again.
Is that you, John? You want to dial in, John?
Oh, wait, I hear you.
There
it's like
you
the voice
go.
of God.
You're
There
on.
you are.
How are you, John?
All right, good. How are you doing?
Good. You're in California?
I'm in California, Los Angeles. It's yeah, it's pretty sunny. Pretty sunny today.
Yeah, we have some sun. Sean's on. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thanks. Sorry for the technical glitches. But good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, and on your time. I'm here with Sean Gaylord. He is the new executive director of the Congressional LGBTQ plus Equality Caucus. Is that right, Sean? You guys have a new name?
Yep.
What finally brought about the change in the name?
Well, I think we were about 5 years overdue to do that. So really there was no reason we hadn't. We just finally got around to like updating the paperwork and making it official.
All right. Yeah. Well, so now it's official.
Yeah.
And speaking of official, you are officially the executive director of the Equality Caucus. It's been over a little over a year now. Is that right?
Just about. Yep. Just hitting
Okay.
the anniversary.
But this is our first formal introduction to you. So welcome, and thank you for agreeing to do this with us. We've had a good relationship with the caucus for a while now, with Roddy previously, and so we're excited to work with you now.
Great.
So can you give us a quick intro to those who don't know a little bit about the caucus and what you do, who your members are?
Sure. So we're actually one of the largest caucuses on the Hill. Caucuses generally tend to be only on the House side. So we are only on the House side. We have 171 members. And so basically any member who cares about LGBT issues and wants to be engaged can join our caucus. They pay dues to join our caucus, but they're pretty minimal for most members. 171 is the largest we've ever been, and probably will even continue to grow a little bit beyond that, even in this challenging year. We are bipartisan. We have historically been bipartisan. We are mostly Democrats. I mean, really, we are 170 Democrats and 1 Republican. I would like to see those numbers increase, and we do regular outreach to Republicans. We want them to join the caucus, but we also work closely with, or we communicate regularly with a number of moderate GOP offices to try to persuade them to join bills or letters or things like that. But we are mostly driven on the Democratic side. Our structure is with 171 members. We have 7 co-chairs. Those are the 7 members of the LGBT community who are members of Congress, so to automatically become our co-chairs. Probably in offices you've worked with before, but it's exciting that we have 3 freshmen, so we have grown in that sense too in terms of our leadership. We have 20 vice chairs, and I can forward out to you all through Jeff or John our membership list. The vice chairs are a combination of members who just care a lot about LGBT issues and are willing to pay more to be a vice chair. So they're willing to make that financial commitment. Sometimes they have a big LGBT contingent in their district. In other cases, there's some newer members who really want to get more engaged on LGBT issues. So we tend to look to those vice chairs when we have opportunities for members to engage on a particular cause or issue or to lead on a letter. And then, of course, we have 144 general members, obviously spread out all over the country. And even those members sometimes are leaders on particular bills or letters or things like that. So it's pretty fluid, but that's our basic leadership structure.
That's great. And you mentioned there's one Republican. For our members out there who might be in that one Republican's district, who is it?
It is Jefferson Van Drew. So some of you know that, or may have recalled this during the impeachment trial. He famously changed parties to become a Republican. And, you know, we were happy that he still wanted to stay on the caucus, and it actually helped make the caucus bipartisan again. Some of you may have worked with, in the past, with Ileana Ross-Layton from Florida, who retired, and she was in the last Congress, and she had been a member of the caucus for many years. Carlos Corbelo, who lost his last re-election, was also a member. But we have always been mostly Democrat, but we do have Jefferson Van Drew, Congressman Van Drew now, and we're talking to some other folks.
Nice. Yeah, it's important, you know, to have that bipartisan membership. So it's a silver lining to that, I guess.
Yeah.
So for any of you who are in Jeff Van Drew's district, I know there's a couple people in New Jersey from the group. I don't know specifically what congressional district they're in, but thank him for staying a member of the caucus. So one thing that's on everyone's mind nowadays, of course, it's impossible not to be talking about the coronavirus.
Yeah.
I personally have family who passed away and are still in the hospital in New York from it. It's really, New York is really the epicenter, and it's just devastating what's happening there. But there's particular concerns for the LGBTQ plus community when it comes to the coronavirus situation. Can you talk a little bit about that? What are some of the concerns?
Yeah.
And what the caucus is doing about it?
Yeah, we are very much in the thick of it right now. Obviously, all of Congress is super engaged on these issues. And as the crisis has unfolded, we've started to figure out ways to make sure that LGBT concerns are part of the mix. So probably everyone knows and it's easy to understand why LGBT people are particularly vulnerable. In some cases, it has to do with health conditions, HIV/AIDS, right, that cause immunodeficiencies. Also, just higher rates of cancer, smoking, depression. There's a number of health concerns in the community that made us vulnerable right from the beginning before this hit. You have to pair that with a long history of discrimination in healthcare, and so a lot of LGBT people are fearful or have faced problems in trying to access medical care in the past. So that has led to them being less likely to seek medical care or to delay medical care. So those are two things you started with. That could have, any time those would have been true in the last 10 years. What you have to add to that is the fact that the Trump administration for the past 3 years has been going after LGBT people, frankly, and trying to strip protections, LGBT specific non-discrimination protections that exist in various places. So agency after agency has started revising their rules or proposing rule changes to strip those protections away from LGBT people. I don't know how else to say it, including in the delivery of healthcare services. I mean, it is done under this rubric of religious freedom that you all know the story that doctors, like cake bakers, should be able to determine who gets to be treated and who doesn't, whether their religious beliefs are imposed on, if they're serving LGBT people or trans people, or LGBT or trans people. And so that made us even more vulnerable, right? So we have been very engaged before I get to the legislative part, we've been engaged on some side issues or other issues that have popped up. The blood ban, some of you have probably been following, has been a long multi-year struggle to have a fair system that allows LGBT people to donate blood, which is a whole other issue that we're engaged on. Also, the concerns about people being detained, immigrants, people in immigration detention, many of whom are HIV positive, who are being detained in conditions that make them more likely to get coronavirus or to have worse outcomes. So some of those issues we've been engaged on, but our focus now is trying to get non-discrimination language in the next, what people call the CARES 2 Act, which will be the next bill coming out of the House on coronavirus issues. That is an effort that we have been working on for a few weeks. We've had some sign-on letters. We've made our concerns clear to leadership. That was already happening. It got even a bigger push last week, because we started hearing that the Trump administration is about to issue a final rule stripping LGBT protections out of Obamacare, which is something we have anticipated, but the timing is just awful for it to happen right at this time, although maybe it gives us a stronger push to show exactly what we have to be worried about and why it's so important. So we're asking for language in the next coronavirus bill that is very explicit that LGBT people should not face any extra barriers or discrimination in the provision of services and resources around the coronavirus crisis. And that's what we're focused on now. We have a sign-on letter that we're circulating this week and starting to get attention. We did a press release yesterday about this effort, and one of our co-chairs, Congressman Cicilline, had an op-ed that ran in the Advocate focused on this combination of issues. So that's what we are, front and center on coronavirus.
Thank you. Yeah, I recommend everyone read that Cicilline op-ed in the Advocate. It was very powerful and, talked to a lot of the issues that you just brought up. Are there any other groups of people that are so targeted as the LGBT community is by this administration?
Yeah, I mean, in some cases when the religious freedom issues pop up, there are other groups that are implicated, and we often talk to these groups and work in coalition with them. So some of them allow for religious discrimination, so against other religions, right? So one of the most important cases, or one of the problems that has popped up during this administration is in South Carolina, an adoption agency was granted a waiver so they could discriminate on the basis of religion. In that case, that was a religious discrimination case. So religious groups are implicated. Women, or especially women who are maybe single mothers, where the healthcare provider may not approve of that lifestyle, right? Or people seeking reproductive health services. So yes, lots of people are implicated. It so happens that LGBT people have fewer protections in the law to begin with than a lot of other groups do. And so in some ways it feels like being singled out a bit, but often it's wider than LGBT people who are being impacted.
Interesting. And I'm glad you brought up the fact that the LGBTQ plus community has less legal protections, because there's a bill that passed the House finally after 30 something years of trying to get something like this passed, the Equality Act, but now it languishes in the Grim Reaper's Senate. Yeah, so can you talk about the status of the Equality Act?
Yeah, it was, as you said, it was really our big victory of the year, and it's a big victory if you go back over several years. This has been in the works for a long time. It used to be called Employment Non-Discrimination Act, ENDA, many years ago, and in recent years it's been expanded into the Equality Act. Passed the House, I guess, in May of last year. Every single Democrat in the House who was there voted.
May of last year sounds like 15 years ago.
I know, right? Exactly. We did have 8 Republicans support the Equality Act, so that means it's in pretty good shape in terms of having to reintroduce it in the next Congress. Shouldn't be a problem on the House side. We always anticipated it sitting in the Senate, and unfortunately it has. We have certainly called for it to move in the Senate, but as you all know, or probably know, it's really challenging. Mitch McConnell has no interest in passing the bill. Nobody knows if we would have had the votes had it gone to the floor, but we were pretty clear from the beginning it was unlikely to go to the floor. So now with everything happening, it seems really even less likely that we're going to see action on it this year. So we're probably going to have to be ready to reintroduce next Congress. The Senate might be a more welcoming environment in the next Congress. We don't know. That could really help. But if not, we're going to need to just find more ways to bring constituent pressure to move it forward. We're also waiting, many of you may know that we're waiting on the Supreme Court decision that we thought might be released this Monday. It wasn't, but should be in the next couple weeks on Title VII, which is pretty significant and really overlaps exactly with what the Equality Act would do. Not exactly, but it's the employment discrimination piece of that. So that's just another issue that is on our radar that we will be following very closely and we'll need to react to depending on how the Supreme Court rules. But the Equality Act will continue to be our #1 priority. Once it passed, we've been looking at another set of bills as priorities for what we can move in the House in this Congress. We had 8 or 9 bills that we were really focused on. Again, that's pretty much up in the air at the moment.
I'm glad you brought up the Supreme Court case because that is very important, and I'd like for you to talk a little bit more about that. So this Supreme Court case specifically deals with employment discrimination.
Right.
So does it have any implications though for fair housing or things like that?
I mean, I think what would happen if we had the ruling that we would want to see in the Supreme Court, it would be that they would be interpreting Title VII's sexual language around sex and gender to include sexual orientation and gender identity. So this is an argument that the LGBT community has been making for a long time, that gender includes gender identity, and if it comes to pass, then presumably Title VII, Title IX, other parts of the law would likely also start moving in that direction. Would be understood that that terminology includes gender identity. The question around sexual orientation is actually more complicated, and there's like less of a history there. I mean, this might be one of those unique situations where the Supreme Court could rule in a way that would protect transgender people and not LGBT people, because
Wild, yeah.
Right, because it's in some ways you can see why it's clear. It's at least clear for some people to believe that if you are being discriminated against based on your transgender status, that it is akin to being discriminated against on account of your gender. Sexual orientation is a little more complicated, although obviously there's a solid case to be made for that. So
for sure,
see how it comes out, but then presumably it would have. Our hope would be it would have a domino effect, and other parts of the law would be interpreted along those same lines.
Yeah, so that's very exciting. So we think hopefully next Monday or the following Monday, is that?
Yeah, this Monday, and the Monday before, we were sort of waiting at 10 a.m. when the announcements start coming out to react if we need to. I actually don't know what the longest it could be, but I think there's an anticipation now every Monday and sometimes Thursday when decisions come out that we could be on there.
All right. Well, a reason to look forward to Mondays then.
Yeah, I guess.
So one other thing that I want to talk about before we open it up to questions, if that's a thing. I don't know if people have questions, start thinking of them. I don't know if you could type them in. So one other thing I wanted to touch on was if you could give our members who are watching right now some tips on how to engage elected officials, whether they're already pro-LGBT or whether they're a little more skeptical of the whole thing. What's just some general advice to reach out to elected officials in person or to their staff?
Yeah, that's a great question. And before coming to this job, I was on the advocacy side for a lot of years in DC working on different LGBT issues. So sort of had the experience from both sides of this. There's a million things to say about this, but I would say, for one thing, not to shy away if your particular members don't seem receptive or open to being helpful on LGBT issues. There is getting support from our allies, but there is also a diminishing opposition from those who are, roughly speaking, not our opponents, let's say, right? So if there is a Republican who's, say, middle of the road on the conservative side, and they're being asked to vote on something, if they've never heard from the LGBT community in their district, because the LGBT community assumed there was no point in trying, then it makes it easier for them to vote against our interests. They may not vote for our interests, but they might refrain from voting the wrong way, or engaging further on an issue, or signing on to a legislation that that they don't have to sign on to, if they know that there are people in their district who are being impacted by what's happening. So I would say reach out to everyone. Obviously, our strong allies like to hear from us too. They like to be thanked for when they do the right thing. Getting member meetings, getting to meet with members in person is helpful. Of course, it's always good, but really it's the staff that really, you know, I will say this as a staffer, that really run the show in a lot of ways. I mean, the staffers are the ones you want to build relationships with over time, check in with them regularly. I think when I was on the advocacy side, once in a while, I would just send around an article that I thought was interesting to staffers that I wanted to maintain connections with, so they're hearing from me.
That's a great tip.
Don't ask, you don't have to come up with an ask. You could just say, I thought this might be of interest. You know, they may or may not read the article, but they're hearing from you, and so therefore, when you need them, they've heard from you, your recognizable name. Those are a couple of quick things I would mention, but staying in just regular contact, I think, is most important. And also, of course, their constituents are the people they care about the most. So they could hear from me, you know, 10 times a day, but hearing from a constituent can move things very quickly.
Right. Does it matter which staffer you talk to, or how do you find out who is the right staffer to be working with?
Because yeah, I would just call the office and ask them which staffer deals with this particular issue. If it's a bill that you're calling about, they'll know directly. What can be a little bit challenging is sometimes they have like an LGBT staffer that handles LGBT issues, and then they might have a staffer that handles like housing, real estate issues. So there might be two people you want to stay in touch with, but I would just call, because it's not, you can't really tell necessarily just by like looking at a staff list. I think just calling and asking who the staffer is probably the easiest way to just make sure you're in touch with the right person.
Okay, yeah, that's good advice. So we have a few more minutes. What are your? I know that you're you know, you're a bipartisan caucus, and you're you know, we're just talking right now. What do you think's going on with the election coming up, especially with the virus? Is that going to have an impact on election day?
Yeah, it's so hard to say, right? And so yeah, obviously, taking off my more official hat, I mean, I've always thought that the House was safe in terms of Democrats keeping the House, and the Senate has always been in play. I think more so these days, there's certainly a couple seats that look like pretty clear opportunities for the Democrats. I think the Alabama Senate seat will be hard to hold, so that would mean, if I'm remembering my math right, that Democrats need to get 3 seats and the presidency, if I'm remembering correctly, or 4 seats along with the presidency. But in any case, it seems like if you look at Colorado, North Carolina, Maine, there do seem to be a number of opportunities. So of course, winning the presidency is a big goal, right, on the Democratic side. But obviously, Democrats would like to have it all, right? So the Senate would be super important. I mean, the big problem we have now, you can have the Senate controlled by Republicans and the House controlled by Democrats, and that can mean sort of gridlock, which can be helpful if you're trying to prevent bad policies from getting passed. But the judges are the tough thing that, you know, the House doesn't really have a lot to do with that. And that, I would say, on the progressive side is probably the biggest concern people have.
Yeah, the stacking of the courts really at all levels, with judges that are, you know, not just conservative, because that's not inherently a problem, but they are, a lot of them are just so, hold a vitriolic opinion of LGBT people.
And very little experience, like very young, sometimes really with almost no judicial or legal experience, which is unnerving, should be.
Yes. Yeah, their only apparent qualification is their strong opinions, you know, particularly regarding LGBT people.
Yeah.
So it is concerning, and it's a big issue for our community. So just a few other things. The census is happening right now. People just basically, this is basically a quick commercial for the census. People should fill out their census. You probably got something in the mail. You could do it online now. Is it important, especially for the LGBT community, to do the census? There were some questions that were removed, if I remember. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. There was, I mean, this year it is really important. I went back and checked, we have tweeted out here and there about the census, because you are able to identify yourself as a member of that you are married, that you are in a same-sex marriage, which is the first time that has ever happened. There was originally, when I was on the advocacy side, I know a big goal was to try to get a question about your self-identification,
Yeah.
which at one point, it's a little muddled. I think at one point there was a strong indication that it was going to get on there, but then it didn't get on there. I've since heard people say, well, it was never really necessarily on there, but it was close, or it was on track. But that was definitely a setback, and so that fight ended a while ago, that we didn't get what we wanted there. But I think asking the question about marriage is a step in that direction. I imagine, I mean, now it's a ways off, right? But I imagine next time around there will be more advocacy, and probably it'll be less of a push to get an LGBTI self-identification question on there.
Right. But I guess ultimately it will, in some meandering way, impact the next census, because if we all, you know, commit to filling out the census completely and representing ourselves, we could hopefully get the right amount of representation in Congress where it should be, and then, you know, hopefully we can get the votes in place so that we control the census next time around.
Yeah.
So in some way, in some meandering way, I guess, you know, it is important for the next time. So one other thing I want to touch on, because it is a really important issue. It doesn't have a big impact on real estate, but it's important for our neighborhoods and our LGBT community. The violence that's happening, particularly against trans women of color and gender nonconforming women of color. Can you talk about, you know, the problem briefly, and then what the caucus is doing to try to fix it?
Yeah, it's actually it's a pretty significant part of our portfolio, especially before the coronavirus crisis hit. It was something we were sort of regularly engaged on. So when last year for Transgender Day of Remembrance, we had some focused activities around this issue of violence against trans women, especially trans women of color. We had Angelica Ross, who some of you may know from American Horror Story and RuPaul's Drag Race, came to, no, I'm sorry, not RuPaul's Drag Race, Pose. We had someone else from RuPaul's Drag Race come by recently. She came to DC last year, and we did a series of meetings, and we did a membership briefing or a membership conversation with probably 18, 19 members of Congress came to the room to meet with us, and Angelica and some other trans advocates were there to talk about the issues of violence. I think it's something a lot of our members care about. We met with trans groups earlier last year to discuss whether it made sense to create new legislation to focus specifically on this issue, but their ultimate conclusion was that there are a lot of bills out there now that would impact the issue significantly. And so our better bet was to keep pushing those existing pieces of legislation. The Equality Act itself would go a long way, right? Because it would shore up protections around housing and employment that lead to people having, you know, living in more challenging environments if you're a trans person. There's also bills around racial profiling and data collection for violent crimes and hate crimes bills that are in existence. There are probably 50 plus bills right now that are in the House that we're tracking that are LGBT focused bills, and I would say there's probably 4 the 6 bills that would be impactful on this issue. But it's a very challenging problem. We are making sure when we hear of cases, every time we hear of a case, we make sure the member knows about that case. And we've asked them, we use it as an opportunity to ask them to please support these bills that would be impactful. And in many cases, members have, tweeted out to express their concern or their awareness of these cases. But I think we need to do more. And I think in the next Congress, we'll sort of try to ramp this up even more.
Yeah. Thank you for talking about that. So I'll just wrap it up with this. We talked about, kind of a lot of bummer subjects, violence against parts of our community, the stalling of the Equality Act in the Senate, the coronavirus and the impact on our community. So what gives you hope? Let's end on a positive note. Why is there reason for us to be hopeful?
Sure. I mean, I would say there's such a strong interest on the Hill in engaging on these issues. So I will say something negative, but I will turn it into a positive. There is a new attack from the Trump administration, let's say, trying to push some new rules around housing that would impact trans people. We get calls and emails from members immediately. Who's doing something on this? What can I do? Can my boss be helpful? And so in many cases, we're fortunate to be able to sort of traffic cop and make sure that, someone's focused on this issue, someone else is focused on this issue. So there's a ton of energy to try to push this stuff forward. And we're not relying on the 7 co-chairs who are LGBT people to do that. Some of the people we work with very closely are allies and are super engaged on this issue. I also think having 8 Republicans support the Equality Act is pretty significant. I think the level of engagement on the Republican side has grown. It's not where it should be, but I think there's probably 20 to 25 Republican House members currently who are supportive, who are co-sponsors of LGBT-specific legislation, everything from hate crimes bills to bullying. So I do think there's obviously a lot of room to grow, but I do think the consensus has really changed over time. On the Republican side now, on the more conservative side, you do hear things about bathrooms and things that I think are kind of distractions, but you no longer hear people really making the case that there's something wrong with being LGBT or that this is not a lifestyle we condone. So the tone has just changed significantly, and it puts us in a much better place to keep moving forward.
That's great. That's awesome perspective. Thank you, Sean. And thank you for the work that you do every day to you and your staff there on the caucus, and to all the members, the chairs and the co-chairs. Sincere thank you from all of us to you. Thank you, and stay safe.
Thanks, you too.
Thanks. Jack, back to you, Mr. Barry.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks, John, guys. Stay safe out there. We hope to see you soon in DC when all this gets back to normal, whatever that is. Well, folks, that wraps up this amazing summit. I'm going to hand it over to Jeff Berger in just 1 minute. I just want to say to everybody, please stay safe. Please do the right thing, whatever it is in your state. And please reach out to each other. This is a relationship business, and we're trying to reach out to our clients and our database really big, but I urge us, our members of the National Association, to reach out to each other, even if it's just a hello phone call, just to introduce yourself or to say, hi, how you doing? It's really good practice for what we should be doing in the larger scheme of things for our business. So we hopefully will see you in Palm Springs. I'm going no matter what, because it's my vacation. And thanks, Jeff Berger, for all the work that you do. David Siroty, guys, have a great, great Wednesday. Thank you very much.
Jack, thank you. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We planned this event many, many months ago. Many of you bought plane tickets, hotel reservations. It was just such an unprecedented series of events, and I can't express how much I miss you all. We see each other at conferences always. It seems like that's so far away now, but we hope to have an update with Palm Springs as soon as June. Maybe we'll have a great Pride Month announcement that we'll be able to host the conference. It's all up in the air. Of course, our health is number one. We can always go to Palm Springs or somewhere else the following year. Thank you so much for joining us in this event. We love you, we thank you, and we wish you and your families are well. Bye-bye.